The LeMans Esports series has seen over 20,000 drivers compete through 6 rounds online and in person at Fuji and Autosport International to bring us the super final, which is being held live at the 24 Hours of Le Mans. The top drivers from each round formed the first 6 teams, and competitors could also build their own team of 3 drivers to compete for a spot. To make the super final even more exciting, 2 wildcard teams, SMP Racing and Veloce Esports, have also joined the grid for the day's action. That's 12 teams, 36 drivers, and a $100,000 prize pool up for grabs. There'll be 9 races spanning over 20 hours of track action over a 24-hour period, celebrating the history of the FIA World Endurance Championship, including a classic Le Mans start for the first and last race, where drivers will dash to their cockpits. Each team has an in-game budget of 150 million euros to put together their garage, so they'll need to choose their cars tactically to put themselves in the best chance throughout the day. Each race will be run in reverse grid order, so the team with the most points will start at the back of the grid and have to fight their way through the field. The first 8 races will determine the grid order for the final showdown, with every point being worth a 1-second head start, and not to mention cash prizes for podium finishes. For the final race, teams can win big from 6th position upwards with a fantastic $25,000 top prize for first place, plus an experience money can't buy, a chance for the top 3 teams to celebrate on the actual Le Mans 24-hour podium. It all comes down to this.
Yeah, it certainly does. It all comes down to this $100,000 prize pool. If one team wins every race, which they can't, but if they could, or if they did, $49,000 up for grabs. Looking at the way it's been going so far, we've got one team on $6,000 so far, a couple of teams here on around $4,000 or $5,000, somewhere around there. So we've got some big money going to certain teams, and a good spread as well from teams that have earned money so far. It's really important that we look at the points tally, though, because when it comes to race 9, this is crucial. As you see here, Baguette Racing leading the way, 49 points. Kitty Crew, 45, 2 teams sharing the next slot there. MAD Motorsport, Williams well, 44. Little drop down, 39 points for Veloce. Keep It Simple, 34. After that last race there, they'll be very happy with that one. 27 points for 3 teams. Tire Wall, Wildcats, and Mighty 38, the team made up of 2 drivers. They have a limit of 12 hours per driver because they have 1 driver short. CMP Motorsport, 24. We have Advocatus Diaboli on 20 points, and then 10 points for SMP Racing. That's how it currently stands. Now we are moving on to a 3-hour race. We had a 2-hour race just now, a 3-hour race coming up. And as we move into the midnight hours where the witches come out and the ghosts start to arrive, fatigue sets in. We have a few more things to really consider when we're looking at these races here. Not only are drivers tired, they're hungry, they're thirsty, the whole lot's going on. We have drivers from all over the world. We have drivers from Mexico, from America, from Canada, from the UK, Germany, France, but also from east of it as well. China, Japan, South Korea, Australia, the list goes on. So when it comes to fatigue, we're talking different time zones, different levels of jet lag as well. And to call this one, we've got another team of commentators for you. We've seen them before, and we're going to hand back over right now. Chris is looking nice and refreshed. He's disappeared off, had a shower, and he smells lovely. Chris McCarthy's right there, but also he's there with Harry.
Thanks very much, Bryn. Yes, it is good to be back. I got to have a break. Don't think the drivers got to have one, though, as well. Neither did this man. He's been at it pretty much the whole way. Harry, you've seen pretty much most of the racing so far. What has been your general take on proceedings?
It's been superb. You know, these guys, they know how to race. It's just been action-packed all the way through. You know, sometimes at the front, sometimes in the midfield, there's always something going on to watch. And normally it's 3 or 4 cars going at it. It's just like you don't know where to look. It's incredible.
And we're going to be going into the Modern GTE class now. I think one of the classes I think I was personally looking forward to the most. Of course, this is really where we can relate to the FIA World Endurance Championship and how the current situation lies there as well in the GTE Pro class. We're going to see that correlate over to this race now with all the big manufacturers in there. Yeah,
it's probably the biggest crossover you've got between a real world championship and the Esports stuff here. A good selection of cars to choose from, and also the biggest thing that we're going to have other than the specific race and the money available is going to be the insight into the final race, because it's the same class they'll be using for that race. So it's going to give us a bit of a picture as to who's hot and who's not.
Yeah, it is, and well, BMW is the car that could be hot, as we say. That's the car that everyone that is going for the big money at the end has pretty much chosen. That seemed to be the strategy that they went for. BMW, such a good car in Forza Motorsport, isn't it?
Absolutely, and on the other end of the spectrum, we've got the Ford GT, which is very much not in terms of that van. No one's actually picked it. So
yeah, I was going to
we've got one Ferrari being driven by the SMP guys, so that's good to see, and then we've got 3 Porsche 911 RSRs. But yeah, the pick of the bunch is going to be the BMW M8s. A lot of people obviously picked up on the fact that the final race, most money available, that's the class that you want the best car in. So the problem they've all got is that there's a lot of them fighting over the prize pool in the same cars. They've all gone for the same kind of idea. It's up to them to battle it out on track.
Well, we've heard the thoughts of Harry. That is pretty much what we expect to see from the BMW. What about from behind, though? You said we've got some Ferraris and some Porsches as well. How do you expect them to get on? Who do you think is going to come out on top there?
Most likely the Porsche, but never going to write the SMP guys off, of course. No, they're the sole Ferrari out there, so they're a bit of an unknown as to what that Ferrari is going to be able to do. It'd be nice to see, we've had MAD, 60% win rate. They've won 3 of 5 races. So, we've got Baguette Racing out there who've been extremely consistent, sort of 3rd, 4th places on the regular. So, it'd be great to see some of the teams who haven't maybe shone as much as they would have liked to, make account for themselves and try and get some money in the pot. Because we want to see everyone leave here with their heads held high, done the best they can with a bit of money in their pocket too.
That's it, and Bryn, of course, was talking about the money some of the teams have racked up already, and they could rack up some more again here. Now, this is time for race number 6. We're going to see Modern GTEs around Spa for 3 hours of racing. I think we're ready to get going down on the grid. The drivers are in the rigs. The cars are getting ready to go. So let's wait no more. Let's get down to the grid and get this race underway then, and it looks like the lights have actually gone out already. I can see it looks like a good start from the SMP Racing team. I think they may even be leading going into La Source for the first time, and indeed they are. As we now pick up the race on your screen, it looks like a very closely matched field. Keep it simple, have a bit of recovering to do after their last race. Of course, they were in a little bit of trouble throughout that race, but SMP Racing it is who lead the way then as we go down towards Eau Rouge for the first time. We are on board with Keep It Simple, and Keep It Simple just trying to stay out of trouble at the moment. Oh no, but a big off in the background. One of the teams lower down the order, getting it all out of shape. Perhaps some contacts through Eau Rouge, and it's ended in tears. Let's see, was that Kitty Crew who has gone off? I think it is. So Kitty Crew are off and down to the back of the field. Kitty Crew, who were running so well early on as well. They are definitely been a team that's featured highly today, but Kitty Crew in this race have now got a lot of recovering to do, Harry.
Yeah, it looked like a nasty incident for them. They come over the brow of Radion, and every car's zooming left of the camera, and all of a sudden you've got one car. We've got more contact down at the hairpin. It's the BMW coming together.
Bit of a traffic jam going on there, isn't it?
Wow. That have come into contact with Tyrewall Racing. So again, like we saw last race, there's lots of contact on the first lap. They're getting to that point. We've got cars on the grass now. Well,
there's cars going off left, right and centre here. It's very much been a hectic race to the start. Unfortunately, we've had a lot of contact. We've got more drivers running wide there through Pouan as well. And we're looking at Veloci Motorsport, who have gone up to 4th place as a result of all of this. SMP have dropped from the lead down to 3rd place. So overall, a good start for them. But unfortunately, the likes of Kitty Crew, Advocatus have dropped places, Mighty 38 likewise. It's been disappointing starts for some teams, but that's meant even better start for the likes of our leaders, Wildcats, CMP and Veloci, who are now up into 3rd place, having just gone past SMP.
Absolutely, you can see by looking at that BMW, the Veloci guys are driving, it's got no rear wing on it anymore. They've been involved in wars on this first lap, but they're still in 3rd position for now. They're missing a headlight as well, which isn't going to help in these gloomy conditions. All the bit of visibility they can get is going to help, but they seem to be surviving just about for now. But as I say, they're all over the place this first lap.
Well, just to remind you, the cars that they're in, we've got the Ferrari for SMP, the Porsche Advocatus, MAD and Keep It Simple, everyone else on the BMW. And it's, of course, what we predicted, the BMWs featuring at the front at the moment, and that is what we predict is going to happen throughout this race. There we can see Veloci now challenging for second place on the back of CMP as they go down towards Eau Rouge for the second time of 78. It is going to be a very long race. Matthew Gator just ahead of us for CMP, under a lot of pressure. He's going to have his mirrors field of Veloci Esports as we go up towards Les Combes. Let's see if we see any move. Well, we're going to see moves behind, that's a certainty, with almost 3 wide there. Oh, we've got someone off on the grass. It was only a brief trip to the grass as they eventually get back on. It was one of the Porsches. I think it was actually MAD, was it? Or might have even been Keep It Simple, but unfortunately team off onto the grass. It's Mighty 38 we're looking at just ahead of that, leading this queue, but the battle continues here for Keep It Simple. They're going to lose a place having had that trip over the grass, Harry.
Absolutely. I don't know if they know it's a 3-hour race and not a 3-minute race. They seem to be just going hell for leather and not worrying about what's going on. So we've had instances, we've got cars driving on the grass down the Keppel Straight for hundreds of metres. It's particularly odd, but the one thing that I think they're going to be careful of is we've got some side-by-side action here, both of them playing fair by the looks of things. It's that position where when you're on the outside going into a corner like Pool 1 and you've got a car on your inside, you kind of have to concede position. You can't make it stick around the outside, so fair driving from the both of them.
It was, and thankfully we got everything recovered. As, we are just now heading up to the end of lap number 2, and we're looking at MAD Motorsport at the moment. They've picked up some money so far today, but MAD Motorsport just running a little bit wide there as we went up towards the right-hander. Now we go back to, I think, who are we on board with? CMP ahead of us, so it is Veloci. That means we are on board with as we go up towards the chicane. This on lap number 2 of 78, and when I say that, I've got to say it is a bit of a surprise, Harry, to see these bold moves being made so early on and these risks being taken so early on, because 70 laps ahead of us means we've got a long race ahead. You don't need to take all these risks early on, and you can see more moves being made. Oh, and it almost ended in disaster there. That was Baguette Racing was involved in that. Baguette Racing, I think, has broken clear from it, but unfortunately one team going round and just about recovering it in the end.
Yeah, I think it's Tyrwell Racing that was involved in that, the one getting half spun. That's twice now they've been half spun on this track, so they're going to be a bit furious in that cockpit.
Yeah.
They're just trying to drive around. They keep getting spun around. It's not their fault, so they're not going to be happy about it. But there's a long way to go. It's something that I don't know if their teammates want to whisper in their ear and say, there's a long way to go. You don't need to make every move, make it count, because they're just turning each other around, getting damaged left, right and centre, and it's going to hinder them until the pit stop.
Yeah, well, we can see now, we're just looking at the likes of Baguette Racing here, just trying to make some positions. Kitty Crew have made a position. That is Baguette Racing trying to go down the inside of SMP Racing. It's a 5-car queue forming now on our screens. And in the middle of it, we've got the likes of Baguette Racing and SMP. We'll run through who else we've got in this as well. But it's Mighty 38 leading it, then SMP, then Baguette. Then we've got Tyrewall, despite that little half spin. They actually did a good job to recover that in the end, did Tyrewall Racing. Just ahead of us, we can see Baguette Racing having a look to the inside of SMP, and Tyrewall have still been able to keep in this battle a little bit of curb and a bit more, shall we say, that time for Kiyoe Matsusaka, and Kiyoe now just getting it back on racing line as, up ahead, Baguette Racing down the inside of SMP. SMP giving them the space to try and make the move. Likewise, Baguette not doing anything malicious in the process. They're going to still be side by side now through the right-hander, and a little bit of a shove there from Tyrewall Racing. A little bit of a helping hand allows Baguette Racing to take that position. Unfortunately, Tyrewall themselves weren't able to take advantage, so it's a 1 position loss there for SMP.
Yeah, it looks like the Ferrari's a bit tail happy going into that section of corners. They lost 1 position, but because of their line, they had to pinch the Tyrewall car on the inside of the apex, and they just clipped the grass, lost the back end. But they got a superb run through Blanchimont now as they go towards the bus stop chicane. They have to go around the long way as they're going to brake later than the SMP car, which means they'll have the inside for the second part. Hopefully they'll avoid contact as they make it through side by side, leaving each other racing room. It's good to see, and SMP retain the position, so great driving.
Oh, SMP Racing there just up to 7th place, going along pretty well. They've been involved in a lot already in this race. This only lap number 4 of 78. And if you don't know much about SMP Racing, let's show you a little bit more. back to the race we go then, and we are still with Tyre Wall Racing at the moment, and it doesn't look like we have a 5-car queue as close as we once did. It looks like a couple of cars have gone missing from this battle. Tyre Wall are now in the middle of SMP, and I think that might be Williams Racing behind as well. So Williams Racing has joined the party here. Williams Racing, who clearly were involved in something at the start. It was pretty impossible to keep up with everything that happened over that first lap or two, because there was just so much going on. Not all of it, of course, can be on camera all at the same time, and we are just seeing now that teams that are having to recover after that. Here is Baguette Racing, pretty solid day for them so far on home soil, representing, well, of course, all French driver lineup. So had the crowd on their side here at Le Mans, and Baguette Racing, I think, doing them proud at the moment. As we got a message in from race control, and that is a little bit of a disaster. Wildcats Racing, our race leaders, have received a 10-second stop-go penalty. Now, the stop-go penalty zone is on the exit of La Source off the side of the circuit. So as they come through the hairpin, they'll have to go off the runoff, and there you can see them doing it. It's right on the exit of the corner, and that's a shame there for our leaders, Wildcats Racing.
Absolutely, but it does promote the no-winged BMW of Veloci up into the lead. So they've been involved in the wars, as we said, missing headlight, no rear wing, and yet they find themselves in first. And what's worth noting as well, the top two, I think, are about 10 seconds. You see, 12 seconds ahead of third place, which is still Wildcats. So despite serving a penalty, there's been that much carnage in these opening laps. They still managed to maintain third position. So it's not at all race over for them. They've got a long way to go to try and catch that gap back up, but not all is lost.
Well, through Eau Rouge we go. This is a very quick corner, of course, one of the most famous in motorsport, and Tyre Wall going through it pretty well there. They're going to have to do it a lot more times in this race, though, and they've been able to pull on to the back of SMP Racing, and Kiyoshi Matsusaka now trying to make a move as they head up towards Les Combes, getting a little bit of a lock up there, but Tyre Wall Racing, a forced mistake from SMP. SMP out of shape, and there we go. Tyre Wall, the pressure on SMP has worked, and they go into, they go up a further position, and it looks as if behind Williams Racing were also able to take advantage as well. So that's 7th place for Tyre Wall Racing, 8th place now for Williams as well. Good driving.
Absolutely. I mean, they're certainly getting their elbows out in this race if they weren't already in the previous race. It's like they've sort of seen what happened last race and thought, that's pretty good, isn't it? And they just carried it on into this race. They're not afraid to put the nose in. They see the Kitty Crew car behind darting to the inside, so it looks like they're making a move now, and you can see them reappearing in front of the car they're on board with.
Here we go then. Let's go back on board with Mighty 38. We've got Kitty Crew just ahead of us. Kitty Crew look like they're starting to pull away here. Kitty Crew are in the BMW, Mighty 38 likewise, but Kitty Crew certainly settling in a little bit quicker to that at the moment now as we head up towards Blanchimont. Mighty 38 looking back, you can see there is the Tyre Wall Racing battle. We're going to switch to that now, keep it simple. We are on board with here, Paul Arivalo. Spoke to him a little bit earlier. Paul was feeling a little bit confident. They've gone for a little bit of a different strategy to keep it simple, and hoping to pick up some money throughout this event. They focused on certain classes rather than others when spending their $150 million budget, just in the hope that they could pick up a few $1,000s each to take back with them. Keep it simple, it's not going to plan in this race, unfortunately, though. They've well, they've been in the wars, not just this race, but the last couple as well. And keep it simple behind MAD Motorsport, who we have seen leading several times throughout the Le Mans Esports Series Super Final. A little bit of an unfamiliar position for them now to be at the back here. That said, of course, they are in the Porsche, Harry, so they're not in that favoured BMW or MAD, so this a race sacrifice really for them, isn't it?
Absolutely. So it looks like we're on board with another Porsche as well in the Keep It Simple. They're looking up the inside. There's not a lot of room there, but there's about a Porsche width, so they're going to stick it in if they can, brake it a little bit later. and holding it around the outside is the MAD Motorsport car, keeping position. So good racing by the both of them, but they're still looking to try and pounce on any mistake that they can. They're trying to work a good exit on these corners to try and be able to power into an overtaking position for the next one that lies ahead.
MAD Motorsport just ahead of us then as we come through the right-hand up and up towards the left. Keep it simple. We are on board with MAD Motorsport doing very well under the pressure here. Here is Williams a little bit further up the field. They are currently in 7th place behind Mighty 38, and they just remind Mighty 38 that they are there and state their intentions for the next lap. And Williams we could see going on the move here, and already there they go down the inside, and it looks as if Williams is going to try and move a little bit earlier than I expected, and I think Mighty 38 nearly caught them out as well. So now surely we're going to see Mighty 38 having to defend from the Williams team here as we go up towards Blanchimont. Are we going to see defensive driving from the Mighty 38 team into the chicane? Tyre Wall are closing in on this as well. This is that Porsche battle we have going on a little bit further down the field involving the likes of MAD Motorsport and Keep It Simple. Looks like Keep It Simple got a good run there and have gone through, and MAD just doing a little bit of drifting. Williams, though, I think did make that move on Mighty 38. At the top of your screen, you'll see that confirmation that they did. So let's switch back to this battle between Keep It Simple and MAD Motorsport. It's Keep It Simple who are ahead for the time being. And now we'll switch right back to this three-car battle, which is now being led by Williams, with Mighty 38 and Tyre Wall Racing just in behind as they come up through Eau Rouge then and down the Kemmel Straight. This for the 7th time of 78 laps. And Williams doing a good job to just break away. This is a bit of a crucial time in this battle for Williams. Now they've got the place, they need to break away. That is exactly what they are doing. So they have turned the situation for Mighty 38 on its head. They've left Mighty 38 being the car to chase, and they've left them to defend from Tyre Wall Racing, who are going to be giving it everything. Luck hasn't really gone their way so far in this event at times, and Tyre Wall Racing, I think, are going to be taking that nothing to lose approach into the remaining races if they haven't been already. And let's see if that now is played out with Mighty 38.
Yeah, so these two, I think, have already come to blows this race. I think it was on the first or second lap down at the hairpin in the second sector they've come to blows. So we'll be hoping that there would be a repeat of that and we could have some fair battling, which looks like we're going to get. But Mighty 38, falling downhill, not making progress forward like they would have hoped. So they're holding on for now, but I think it's only a matter of time before that Tyre Wall car comes past them and they don't see much of it for the rest of the race potentially.
Well, here we go. Mighty 38 side by side with Tyre Wall Racing round the outside. They go. And looks like they're just about going to stay on the track there. Mighty 38 giving it big guns. See a very happy Veloce team just below me. They are leading the way in this one, Veloce of course, and great to see that they have got some supporters in. And well, it's great to see a good atmosphere around the arena at the moment. People enjoying the racing, not just from inside, but on our big screen that is on the outside of the arena, just where you can go and have a drink and enjoy some food here at LeMans as well. A nice area in the fan zone to enjoy the racing. Veloce, though, in this one going along very well indeed, and I've got to say, of course, they're in the BMW, so we expected them to be one of many cars battling for the lead in that BMW. And James Baldwin at the moment is doing a fantastic job. Did catch up with James Baldwin actually when we were doing the karting activity for the drivers, and James Baldwin, his experience on this game, hugely limited. He had around 2 days to actually get up to speed with it, but James Baldwin just showing that how he is a very versatile driver and was able to get straight onto this, got up to speed very quickly, and James Baldwin just got his head down, and at the moment he is showing what a proven driver he is, leading the way in this one so far. But we'll leave Veloce out in the lead at the moment. We know that they are there and safe for the time being. CNP, what about a shout out for them? Second place, and in very comfortable second place as well. They're about 3 seconds back from Veloce, a further 7 seconds back to the next car. So a big shout out for the CNP team. They are doing very well. Here they are. CNP, it's perhaps been an up and down road at times for them in the super final, but they have certainly not given up. Their heads have not dropped, CNP, and they are on track to pick up more money here if they can stay where they are. $2,000 would go to them just for this race alone. And of course, we're nowhere, well, I say we're nowhere near, we're edging ever closer towards that final race where there's even bigger money up for grabs. And of course, the chance to go and stand on the LeMans podium as the cars line up on the grid ready for the start of the 87th Le Mans 24 hour. Get my numbers mixed up, but thankfully not my positions. Veloce, CNP and Wildcats it is 1, 2 and 3 at the moment, with Baguette Racing in 4th place, Harry.
Yeah, it's coming to fruition to show that, you know, some of the teams who have had a difficult time up to this point, they're now coming good. You know, for example, CNP that we're on board with here, they've been there or thereabouts in the events, not had any sort of outstanding results, shall we say. But a race like this in the grand final, for example, the final race that we've got, race 9, that's going to bring them a haul of money for them to take back home, which is probably more than what the other teams are going to gather potentially throughout the first 8 races. So this is where they put all their eggs. Same as Veloce, they're kind of doing the same thing, and they're doing a stellar job at the moment of leading the race. CNP, they drive around in second, not particularly closing the gap to the leaders, but at the moment they're solid in second. They're not under any pressure from behind. They don't really need to push the envelope if they don't want to. They could just try and look to bring home a solid second if they want, but a long way to go. They can try and turn it up if they want to at any point.
And that is the perfect situation to be in when you're at the start of a race like this. You've got a lot of laps ahead to be in this position, knowing that now all you have to do is focus on your pit stop strategy. That's the best position to be in, isn't it? And speaking of pit stop strategy, what are you expecting from this one?
It should be fairly closely matched. We're not sure exactly how many times they're going to be pitting or when they're going to be pitting, but we don't expect there to be extra cars doing extra pit stops. I don't think it's going to come down to that. I just think it's a case of them doing all roughly the same. As we've got Baguette Racing with a 5-second stop and go penalty for causing a collision. So I'm not sure if we saw that on the stream. I think we did. I can't remember who it was they made contact with, but they've got a penalty for it. So they'll be looking to stop on the penalty spot on the outside of turn 1 of the source. But we believe that's for an instant on one of the opening laps where they caused a collision. It might have been when obviously we saw a car going off at Radion early on. Yeah,
well, of course, I think a lot of incidents to investigate there. Our race control team doing a fantastic job, as they have been doing throughout the entire event. Our adjudicators likewise as well. It is being looked at very heavily, driving standards. There was a lengthy driver's briefing at the start of the weekend in the Michelin VIP box above the start-finish straight, where after the driver's briefing we got to see Rebellion Racing doing practice pit stops. Here we go. This is a race. This is a move for the lead. We'll move for the lead. I say a move for position. We'll come back to that. This is Williams side by side on the exit of the chicane. It's a move that took 2 corners to come off potentially, but Williams are just going into 5th place ahead of Kitty Crew. So a good move that from Williams. I've got to say, great respect shown between the 2 teams. Kitty Crew not giving up yet, but are just having to back out there with Williams on the inside. But Williams still giving him a little bit of room as they went down to Eau Rouge. You may have spotted Baguette Racing taking their penalty in the background on the outside of La Source as well. But that is Williams up to 4th place. Of course, taking 5th place initially of Kitty Crew. 4th place came for free, with Baguette Racing having to take that 5-second stop-go penalty.
Yeah, I think Williams are going to be mainly looking for just I say a clean race, but just a consistent race from their drivers. They've had a lot of ups and downs. The last few races they've had quite a few incidents, whether it's down to their own driving or due to pressure from guys behind. We're 9 laps into this race. They find themselves quite high up the order in 4th, so not quite in the positions for money yet. Quite a long way off at 10 seconds. That's a big gap to try and close, but they've got a lot of time to try and do it. They're under pressure as well, so it's not easy to always drive as quickly as possible, because you've got to consider the car behind, whether they're attacking, taking defensive lines. But they seem to be clear for now. Clear track ahead. They can just try and get their head down, not make any mistakes, and just drive for their life.
Yeah, that's good words there from Harry, of course, experienced sim racer yourself, so great to get your thoughts throughout this event and in racing scenarios like we have at the moment. But we are going to be back on board with Williams. Now they've got a 9-second gap to the next car, which of course will be third place. Just see the standings up the top of your screen there, and highlighted blue means we're on board with MAD Motorsport, who are just behind. Let's have a look. It looks like they've just lost a position, in fact, to keep it simple. So MAD Motorsport, this is a battle that has been raging for a number of laps now, and it is continuing to go on. Keep it simple, having just got that place, just missed their braking point, run a little bit wide through the chicane, and now they're going to invite more pressure as we head down to Blanchimont and the chicane as well. So keep it simple, maybe up into that 10th place, but that doesn't mean they're going to necessarily stay there. They've certainly put themselves now in a position for MAD Motorsport to get the tow and potentially a position going into the chicane. So let's have a look if they can do this one. MAD Motorsport, well, they're already alongside, but they had to back out because the grass presented itself to them, and MAD Motorsport, despite that, throw one down the inside. Keep it simple, giving them the room, and MAD Motorsport on the exit are going to have to tuck back in. Good racing between both teams there, even if there was no changes in position. There certainly almost was, as MAD Motorsport is going to be take two for them into La Source once again. Keep it simple, just giving enough racing room. Fantastic racing from both drivers here, but Kean Butler at the moment just unable to get through.
Absolutely, it's Kean's first event, we understand, so I think the first race he brought the car home for a win, so that's a great start to his event. Obviously, we've now got two teams that we thought would be battling for the lead last race, but they're kind of battling now, but for the last positions basically, apart from 12th place team behind them, we're also not having the best of races. But it's great racing between these two though. It's respectful and it's fair, but it's hard and it's close, which is exactly the type of racing we want to see.
It is, and this is what you get when you put the best drivers throughout the Le Mans Esports series together in one room. Oh, it looks like Keep It Simple have run wide. Yes, they have, and well, that was just a simple mistake, all on their own there. MAD Motorsport were right on their tail. Keep It Simple perhaps were just either a little bit too busy looking in their mirrors, or just felt the pressure a little bit too much from MAD Motorsport. And once again now we see a position change for 10th place. This time it is MAD Motorsport going up into 10th place. Keep It Simple down to 11th.
Absolutely, no. It's one of them situations where that move that we've just seen, it's when we talk about cars behind trying to force an error and trying to make the driver in front make a mistake, and they show their nose in corners but don't actually go for the move to try and frighten that car off the road. That's a prime example of how it can work. They weren't actually going to go for the inside, they just showed their nose. Car in front thought they had to leave the space, ran wide, and they took the place, easy as that.
Good stuff there. So back on board we go with MAD Motorsport. Keep It Simple, we can see just behind. It looks as if MAD Motorsport have just been able to just drop back here a little bit. In fact, Keep It Simple, sorry, I've just dropped back from MAD Motorsport. We're looking back from MAD at the moment. Keep It Simple just trying to get a little bit closer, but MAD Motorsport on board with them as we go into the chicane. All this battling has seen the likes of SMP Racing and more pull away, and it's now a real frustrating situation for the likes of MAD Motorsport and Keep It Simple as well. Behind that we have Advocatus. We're not too sure what's going on with them at the moment, but they are certainly struggling in this race, our Advocatus. They are in the Porsche, so it's no surprise to see them down the field like we have with race winners, MAD Motorsport, Keep It Simple as well. Big names down the field, and that's down to their car selection in this race. If you, just to give you an update, when it came to car selection for this race, the prices for each car were, we had 32 million for the Ferrari, and SMP spent 32 million on that. No one chose the Ford, unfortunately, which was 30 million. Few teams going for the Porsche, which we've been talking about a lot with Advocatus. MAD Keep It Simple, 22 million, so it was a steal really at that price, considering the BMW was 40 million. Most of the field have gone on that, The price range certainly reflecting the performance range as well, because the Porsches all the way down the back of the field, the BMWs all the way to the front, and SMP and that Ferrari down the back of the field as well. So BMW's filling the top 8 positions at the moment.
Absolutely, and this is the biggest factor that we've got in terms of the cars they're picking. Probably the class that's got the biggest difference between the most expensive and least expensive. Rightly so, it's the most important category that we've got, with the final race also being in this category. But by saving 18 million credits, they're looking at being able to buy pretty much a whole other car essentially, and they've got a lot of money to then spend on other categories where the difference between the fastest car and the second fastest car is maybe 4 million, 6 million. They can make up in, like, let's say 3 races what they lose in essentially 2 races.
That's it. That's the strategy, isn't it, with this 150 million budget to spend? It's do you go save that 18 million, put it into other races to perhaps gain more points, to give you more of an advantage for that final? But this performance difference we're seeing, it's quite large, isn't it? Is it larger than what you expected?
It is. I know we've had a lot of accidents and rubbing his racing, so to speak, for the first few laps, which has sort of spread the field out more than we probably would have expected. But ultimately, the Porsche I would have thought had been a little bit closer to the M8 BMW, but it's just not there. Now, I don't know if a lot of teams are maybe hoping that by having better cars in other events, they maybe lead the championship, get more championship points in the run-up to race 9. And with more championship points, they get more of a head start in terms of seconds, because every point they get in the championship equates to a second that they might have ahead of the driver that's behind them, or team that's behind them. But it's showing that it's not potentially going to be enough. There's a massive gap in these cars in terms of their performance and lap time. So I don't think anyone's going to be in a position where they can fend off a BMW in a Porsche in the last race because of the points they've accumulated up to that last race.
And that's a 90-minute race, that last race, isn't it, around Le Mans. We're not even a third of the way through this race. This was a 3-hour race. We're nowhere near to getting to an hour, I don't think. Probably about half an hour or so into this. Even with a gap of, let's say, if you have 5 points over a team with 5 seconds, that gap's just going to decimate hugely quickly. So are you almost just giving up the chance of going for the $25,000 at the end and that chance to go on the podium just so you win some more money on the build-up to that?
I think so. It's a tactic that I think, in particular, speaking to a few of the drivers, I think it's keep it simple, and MAD Motorsport have sort of gone down that route of going through 2 or 3 races where they know they're going to have a better car, have a better chance of winning money. Take that as a banker for them, essentially. And we've got 8 BMW M8s in this category, which means there's 8 of them who have basically picked the best car to try and go for the most money. Now, not all 8 of them are going to be able to win that big prize. Only one of them is going to win the 25 grand for the first place. Obviously, it does go down as you finish 2nd, 3rd and 4th. You still win quite a lot of money compared to what you earn in the top 3 positions for these first 8 races. But if they were to finish first, look at MAD Motorsport, 3 wins already. So that's basically them on $9,000. If they're not finishing anywhere high enough in the final race, then they've already done a better job across the whole series.
It's weird though, because I compared speaking to someone, let's say like Veloce and Keep It Simple, to teams that have gone for different tactics for this particular class. Both sold it to me just as well. From a Veloce point of view, it was, well, you have to go for it. You have to go for it. But for Keep It Simple, it was like, well, we can take loads of money on the build-up to that. So with less competition, perhaps, as well. So it's 2 tactics that are, of course, the polar opposite, but both have huge advantages as well as perhaps disadvantages.
Of course, and it's the ambitions of the teams as well. Veloce, well known in esports in terms of motor racing, so maybe they've got bigger ambitions and they're winning the big prize at the end. Teams like Keep It Simple, their drivers are individuals who have been pushed together because of the way the qualifying events have worked. So on the sort of personal side of things, they might have gone, well, actually, we'd rather just take whatever we can get in other races and let the big boys, so to speak, sort themselves out in the final race, where we're probably not going to stand much of a chance, because they're already at a bit of a hindrance in terms of they're not used to working as a team. They've not got that camaraderie between them, not got that teamwork between them that some of the pre-made teams have already got. So it's a case of weighing up your options, seeing what's best, and just coming to a decision as a team.
You say they haven't got that between them. Sometimes they can't even speak the same language either. So I think MAD Motorsport, Keep It Simple, it's a very good point you raised there. They've thrown together as individuals. They're one of 6 teams who have done that. But it doesn't seem like it seems like they've done a fantastic job. You would never think that these are three individuals that have never met before. They've worked together so well as a team. And I know what you're saying. You know, they're not the same team that, you know, perhaps SMP are at Williams and Veloce likewise. But nevertheless, they're still working well together as a team.
Of course, they've all got the same mentality. You know, they love playing Forza. They're great at playing Forza as well. So when it comes to the fact that they have to work together, it's not a problem for them. They've got the personalities that go well. They know what their end goal is. So none of them are egotistical. No, they're not a case of, well, I want to drive the best car in the final race because that's where all the money is. It's a case of understanding what their capabilities are, what their limitations are, and playing to their strengths. That's all they can really do at this point, and at the moment it seems to be paying off for the likes of, let's say, MAD Motorsport. 3 wins already, can't fault that.
I think that's key, isn't it? Playing to your strengths, and as you said, even just with those 3 wins alone, MAD Motorsport have $3,000 each. So I don't think anyone could complain with that for a weekend's earnings. Now go back to Baguette Racing, just heading down towards Eau Rouge. So Baguette Racing have had their race unfortunately turned upside down with that stop-go penalty that they have had to take. Pit stop wise, we're not really sure when we're going to see all those changes being made. Here is Kitty Crew, who have been going along very well so far today. Kitty Crew, one of the teams, of course, in the BMW as well. Now we've seen these types of cars, of course, going round Le Mans throughout practice and throughout qualifying. BMW, Porsche, Ford, Ferrari, just 4 of the 6 manufacturers that are competing in the GT class this weekend. But it's great to see them going head-to-head outside, as well as in the Le Mans Esports Series, as well as on track, because you know, we've seen Ferrari, Ford, Porsche, BMW going head-to-head in the World Endurance Championship, so we know the differences between those cars. At the likes of Spa, which we are racing on now they're going to be fighting here this weekend. However, it's also the class where we're going to settle the 25,000 at the end.
Absolutely, and it's great that you can bring, you know, the competition from the real aspect of World Endurance Championship and bring it into a game like Forza, a simulator like Forza, and let these guys take control of those cars and battle it out just as hard as the guys do in the real championship. So it's great, you know, publicity and promotion for everyone involved in terms of the fact that we get to see great racing in esports, we get to see great racing between the manufacturers in the real World Endurance Championship, so can't complain at all.
Yeah, and there's not, I mean, the crossover between, you know, what we're seeing on screen now and in terms of what we've seen so far this season is a little bit different, because BMW, who are known as an up-and-coming brand in the GT class, you know, they've entered in the last year or so. Now they're starting to come into play. They're the ones leading the way in this. Porsche, meanwhile, who absolutely dominated this season, they'll wrap up all titles this weekend at Le Mans in the World Endurance Championship, both drivers and manufacturers as well. Arguably the favourites to go and take the victory as well this weekend. Struggling a little bit at the moment in this.
Of course, you know, diversity is not always a bad thing. You know, sometimes the case where you see something in real life, you don't want to just then tune into a game and see the same thing happening. So the opportunity for other manufacturers and other cars, other teams to come to the fore in this kind of environment, you know, it's good exposure for everyone in terms of the fact that you haven't got to drive the same thing that you see in real life because of the way that works. You can choose whatever you want, and you stand a bit of a chance depending on how the game works, essentially.
I have to ask, have you watched much of the World Endurance Championship this season, or have you been following it? Is there any manufacturers that you potentially think are ones to watch this weekend, challenging the likes of Porsche?
It's something that I've not followed too much in the past, but it's something that's become more and more apparent in general motorsport. You know, it's becoming bigger and bigger following, better racing, of course. So it's a case of, you know, Porsche have always been, you know, there or thereabouts in, you know, motorsport in general. They're a big brand. They do a lot of everything. So it's hard to look past them this weekend. As you say, you know, they're on the brink of, you know, winning all the titles and championships that they can. So you can't really look past them, can you?
Yeah, well, Porsche, they're the most successful manufacturer here at the 24-hour Le Mans. They have been for a number of years, and they are continuing that at the moment in the GT class. Let's have a look then who's going to be out in the Porsches this weekend, while we do have just a little bit of silence. It looks like we've got 3 in the LMGTE Pro class entered. We've got the likes of Michael Christensen, Kevin Estra, Lawrence Santour, Patrick Pile, Earl Bamber, and Nick Tandy also going out as well. Sven Muller, Matthew Yamine, and Dennis Olsen out, as well as the 4th car. We've got Richard Leitz, Jan Maria Bruni out, as well as Frederick Makuweki. So 4 cars out in the GTE Pro class. Very good chance for them to go and take victory. Also bringing 4 cars though is Ford. They're bringing both their World Endurance Championship cars as well as their IMSA cars as well. That's a trend that has been set over the last few years. So some big names within Ford GT as well. You've got the likes of Andy Prio, Stefan Mucker, Harry Tignall, Olivier Pla, Billy Johnson. They form 2 of the teams. We'll have to go back to that though, because something has happened on track, it seems.
Yeah, we've got Baguette Racing lining up a move on Tyrwell, who made a mistake coming through Rouge and over Radion. They've got a bit wide, cost them the run down the straight at Kemmel, and they've lost that position to Baguette Racing under brake. So that's an easy pass now, much easier than they would have been expecting, but they put the pressure on and Tyrwell cracked under that pressure, and that position has been lost.
So let's return then. We're of course just reviewing what we're gonna, who we're going to be seeing in the GTE Pro class here at the World here at Le Mans this year. So 4 GT cars, we said in the 66 is Muka Pla, Billy Johnson, and 67 Prio Tignall, and then Jonathan Bomarito, Ryan Briscoe is going to be in the 69 with Richard Westbrook and Scott Dixon, and then the 68 we've got Joey Hahn, Dirk Muller and Sebastian Bourdais. So 4 cars apiece for Ford and Porsche. Definitely going to be a big battle going on between those 2. Looking towards the likes of AF Corse with the Ferrari, they've got Alessandro Pierguidi, James Gallardo and Daniel Serra, and then they've got Davide Rigon in the 71 with Sam Bird and Miguel Molina. Might as well go through BMWs as well while we have the time. Of course, the 81 car is Nicky Katzberg, Martin Tomczyk and Philip Eng. And then the 82, Augusto Farfus, Antonio Felix da Costa and Jesse Kron as well. Huge names in the GT class. It's something we've seen over the last few years in the World Endurance Championship, that big names going into that class, because it does provide the closest racing.
Of course, you always want to be following close racing, providing close racing for the fans, because that's essentially what we all tune in for. We want to see our favourite drivers and big name drivers coming into industries of motorsport, making a name for themselves, improving their name in other categories, for example. And essentially that helps grow the sport and grow the show. A bit like what's going on here, where we've got the 2 BMWs for 2nd and 3rd. I think it's CMP ahead, coming under pressure. The slipstream's not going to be as effective as they need it to be on this lap through, but I'll say that under brakes around the outside, that's incredibly brave, but they've got it slowed down inside to the left-hander, and that's an incredible move for the Wildcats team. Shoma Takaya, what a move that was. He came from absolutely miles back, but I've maybe seen people just a bit cautious on the brakes, but he certainly wasn't, and he made that move stick. Brilliant stuff.
Well, the Wildcats team have been pretty much showing off Shoma Takaya all week. He wouldn't have understood anything that they were saying, because he doesn't speak a word of the English language, but Shoma Takaya is the poster boy of the Wildcats team. They have put their hands up and admitted that, and I think he just showed why there, round the outside going into Lacombe. Fantastic move, and that's put Wildcats into 2nd place then, ahead of CMP. So fantastic stuff there from Shoma Takaya. It's come a long way to take part in this event. Of course, many drivers have done so. They've come from the likes of Asia, Australia as well. We've got North and South America. We've had drivers coming from. Of course, one of our commentators, Bo, has come all the way from Australia. It took him 24 hours to get here, and what a journey it's been for the drivers. And even all week, we've been giving them lots of experiences, starting with the tour at the museum, into the karting as well. And then since then, it's been all focus on this event. We had the 9 qualifying sessions yesterday, which led us then into the racing today. But CMP Motorsport, we're on board with them, going up to La Source for the 19th time of 78. They're not prepared to let Wildcats get away here. I think it would be an idea now to just try and tuck in behind Wildcats. We know how quick Takaya is in the car. this is probably a good time to just settle into a rhythm now, isn't it, leading up to the pit stops?
Of course, they've now got a reference car in front of them to be able to essentially follow. You can learn and follow the braking points, turning points, and just try and get dragged along at a faster pace than otherwise driving by yourself. But so coming back now to the Baguette racing car, they've had a solid day so far in terms of their results. And at the moment, this race probably not going to plan as they would have liked. 6th place for now, that's I think going to be their worst place if they were to finish there for the entire event so far. And it's in the M8 as well, a car that is going to be good. It's the best one available to them, but only 6th place for them. So it's a bit disappointing so far. Long way to go, of course, but I don't know, they might have been caught up in some earlier incidents on the early laps which just set them back. But they're on a recovery mission, 29 seconds back, only a couple of seconds behind Kitty Crew in 5th. So it looks like they're trying to hunt them down and see if they can catch their prey.
And when they had that penalty as well to go along with all the dramas that they had, didn't they? And it was inflicted by those dramas, that 5-second stop-go penalty. Our race officials who have their eyes on everything and are able to look back at anything that goes on in the racing. And they certainly did spot something that they weren't happy with Baguette Racing in the first few laps of the race. But as you said, Harry, they are on a charge back through the field at the moment, and it must be a hugely frustrating situation when you get stuck in something like a stop-go penalty. It's like having a drive-through, essentially. When you come back from something like that, you almost drive at 110% and not 100%.
Yeah, I mean, when it's self-inflicted as well, it's almost worse than being an innocent party, because you know that you've been the cause of why the race has been compromised. But as you say, you get in that position where you think, right, I need to get my head down now and drive beyond what I think is capable. But there's always the risk of driving beyond what you're capable of means you're more at risk of making mistakes, and they can't afford that. They've already given away time because of the stop-go penalty. They need to be consistent and try and be quick at the same time.
Well, we're on board with Advocatus, who are a little bit further down the field at the moment than they have been at times. Advocatus have shown that they can fight for race wins at times throughout the LeMans Esports Series Super Final, but their car choice is not working for them in this one. They would have expected that going with the Porsche. Unfortunately, this was a race where they essentially said, we will finish at the back, it does not matter, Advocatus. That said, are going to have to try and take every point they can still, because finishing 9th is 1 second gained, then finishing 10th, isn't it? It's a second less lost, shall I say. I know that sounds very confusing, but it would mean perhaps that they are only 9 seconds behind the car ahead rather than 10 when it comes to that last race.
Exactly. There's 3 Porsches on the grid. They're in one of them, so they've still got competition around them in the 2 other Porsches. They want to be best at the rest, and as you say, saving a position means you're gaining an extra point, which is 1 less second. You're going to have to be sat on the grid for the final race, watching everyone else drive off around you while you're waiting for your name to be called.
Well, Baguette Racing look like they are starting to get a little bit closer to gaining another position back here. This is going to be the battle for 5th place that is about to start between themselves and Kitty Crew. Baguette Racing on a charge. The all-French driver lineup trying to do the home nation proud here in Le Mans, and Baguette Racing, they have a few more eyes on them at the moment because they are reeling in Kitty Crew hand over fist. Baguette Racing are lining up a potential move at the end of this lap as we make our way up towards the chicane. They're now in the tow up towards Blanchimont, and they're going to get closer and closer. They've got to be careful of track limits there, though. That was Baguette Racing just running a little bit wide. Kitty Crew were in danger of doing the same just ahead. Up towards Blanchimont we go then, and let's see if we have anyone getting out of shape. At times we've seen drivers getting all out of shape there, but Aurelien in the Baguette Racing car doing a brilliant job not to do that on the last lap as they now go through the chicane and up towards Les Sources. This will be now for the 21st time. Baguette Racing there in 6th place. They weren't able to make a move on that lap, Baguette Racing, and just getting a little bit of a lock-up going in to the hairpin, but picked it up nicely, actually. It was, in fact, Kitty Crew who were the team running wide just ahead as we now go up towards Eau Rouge.
Yeah, they're going to try and get a fantastic run through Eau Rouge and Ragnon now, which they've got. You can see how much they're gaining. So they're going to be side by side going down the Kemmel Straight, heading towards that chicane that lies up ahead. And it's going to be a case of, well, not even who's brave on the brakes, they've got the move done. So simple stuff for them there.
Yeah, well, that was easy as you like for Baguette Racing. That's a position gained. And there could be more on the way, because I think that's Williams who are just up ahead. It is. So Williams, who are in 4th place, not too far in the distance here for Baguette Racing to close in now as they come down to the hairpin. Now making their way to the left-hander. And they will head down towards Pouhon for the 21st time. Baguette Racing on a fight back through the field. To remind you, if you didn't catch it, they did get a 5-second stop-go penalty for an incident at the start of the race. Exactly what happened in that incident is something we cannot tell you with complete certainty, because it wasn't something that we caught the whole of on screen. Unfortunately, there was a frantic start to the race, a lot of drivers getting involved in incidents. We saw a bit of almost a car park on the first lap at one time as well, but thankfully in the end everyone was able to get round safely and got going again without too much damage to any teams. 1 or 2 penalties were given out, but other than that everyone was able to complete the first lap with no huge problems. Baguette Racing, though, since taking this position, haven't really been able to pull a gap. It's of course only been about 3/4 of a lap, but Baguette Racing will be hoping to be challenging Williams on their own if they can get there. Williams just up ahead of us in 4th place as we start lap number 22.
Absolutely, Baguette on the charge now. They've made a pass on that last lap. They've now got Williams in their sights as well, only a second and a half or so up the road for potentially 4th place. Again, it's going to be frustrating for them. They're working this hard and they're not yet at a point where they're going to be earning money for positions they gain, but they're putting themselves in the fight.
Towards Eau Rouge we go. We remain on board then with Baguette Racing. Kitty Crew behind us. Tyrewall Racing are about 4 or 5 seconds back from that. Tyrewall Racing right in the middle of the field at the moment. In case you forgot, Veloce are still our leaders from Wildcats. They're 4 seconds clear out front at the moment. That gap has definitely come down between the 2 leaders, but I don't think it will be anything concerning Wildcats. It's fairly stable at the moment. CMP also doing a good job. Looks like they may have closed the gap down to the top 2 as well, but pit stops have not been made yet. So when they happen, that's going to throw the race into the next phase, and that's when we always see changes, the big changes in races being made, particularly in a 3-hour endurance race around Spa in the Modern GTE class.
Yeah, you can say we're on board with the Baguette Racing car. And we keep seeing they look to be running just a fraction wide on some of these corners, so they're pushing extremely hard, and I wouldn't be surprised if at some point the race stewards might be looking at that to see if they're running too wide for their own advantage. So something they might need to take care of in the next few laps just to get things back under control. They continue to try and reel in that Williams car that they can see in their sights.
I can tell you, they're not the only ones that were doing it on this lap. Kitty Crew have got to be careful themselves as well. Kitty Crew on board with them we go now, and they still have just hitting the grass on the apex there, and you can see what happened to the car as a result. Kitty Crew keeping themselves close enough that if Baguette Racing are to catch Williams, they will be in a position to have a little bit of a battle over 4th place. So Kitty Crew doing a very good job here. On board we are with Kitty Crew. Through La Source we go. Difficult corner to get right at times, that one. It's a very important corner, isn't it, La Source, because of course it takes us to the run through Eau Rouge and then down along Kemmel Straight as well.
Of course, there's always a corner that invites you to brake later because you've got a bit of camber to help you as well, but if you just run out of that camber, there's a bit of a slide again for Kitty Crew. We saw through Bonchemont they were sideways again through Eau Rouge on this lap, so they're pushing hard as well, but you can see how much time they're losing by making these small mistakes, so they've got to rein it in just a little bit. But yeah, La Source, as you say, a corner that you need to get right as we're on board now with the Advocars car in front of us. So I guess that's going to be the MAD Motorsport car, the two Porsches still battling away. They've been at it all race, and it's great to see.
Yeah, it's Advocatus who are the ones battling with MAD Motorsport now. Looks like Keep It Simple have dropped back, so Keep It Simple now down to 12th place. As here we go, more battling going on. This is with the likes of MAD, Advocatus and Keep It Simple. Side by side we are, and Advocatus, are they about to go into 10th place? Yes they are. Advocatus then got the move done before the left-hander, so good job there from Advocatus. Williams, who we're on board with, have run wide. In fact, is that Williams going straight on ahead of us? No, it isn't. MAD Motorsport, sorry, the ones we were on board with there, just dropping to the back of the field. So, well, Advocatus now ahead of us. Keep It Simple at the head of the queue, having to defend, and Keep It Simple going on the defensive. MAD Motorsport trying to tuck in behind. Now stuck on the outside is Advocatus, and they're going to be kindly shown to the runoff area, but Advocatus keep their noses just ahead at the moment as we go up towards Eau Rouge. Are we going to be side by side all the way through Eau Rouge? No, we aren't. Advocatus just thinking the better of it in the end. That allows MAD Motorsport to go back into 11th. Keep It Simple, though, are going to be the ones having to go on the defensive now. We are on board with them, looking back at MAD Motorsport. Just behind that, of course, Advocatus as well. Three teams getting closer and closer. MAD Motorsport going to throw around the outside, side by side into the left, and that is a good move complete there. They're going to have to try and execute it now around the right-hander, but and it's complete. So MAD Motorsport, fantastic move there made. It took 3 corners to get it done, but round the outside on both occasions. MAD Motorsport up to 10th.
Yeah, that's twice we've seen that kind of move into that chicane sequence where the car on the outside goes in late, and then they can put the car in a position where they're on the inside for the left hand, and the car they're trying to overtake can't turn in, and they can just use that line to carry the speed and get the position done. So great stuff from them to get that place.
It's a move they set up right at the start of Lakon, and then finally executed it through the right-hander that leads us downhill. So fantastic stuff there from MAD Motorsport. We remain on board with them at the moment. Keep It Simple are up into 11th place. Behind that, of course, rounding out the field, just behind those guys we have Advocatus. So in fact, it seems that they've dropped away, Advocatus. I'm not too sure if they've made a mistake, but they're off the back of this now at the moment, and that's going to split this group up for now. But I can tell you it may not stay that way, because we've seen the likes of Keep It Simple and MAD Motorsport battling all race. Advocatus, who at one stage weren't involved in this fight, then got themselves involved. So Advocatus, don't forget about them for too long, because I'm sure they will be back for another go. Let's check in with some of our leaders. We've been focusing on this battle for 10th place, and what a good battle it has been. But up in the distance, I think the gap between our leaders is continuing to come down, only little by little. But Veloce are being caught ever so slightly from the Wildcats team. The gap is now 2.8 seconds. CMP, who at one stage had the gap to the leaders down to about 6 seconds, are now 9 seconds behind. But certainly the top two, gap is coming down.
Absolutely, and it's high pressure situation for both those guys, Veloce and Kiddie Crew, or Wildcats, sorry. They're in a position where every 10th of a second a lap is what they're fighting for, because the gap, it's gone from about 4 seconds to 3 seconds over the case of maybe a dozen laps or so. They're slowly getting that gap down, and at this rate there will be enough time for them to catch it, but it's whether any of the two drivers that they've got crack under that high pressure that they're putting on for such fine margins.
So just trying to get those apexes every single lap, getting the braking zones right. One mistake, you see the gap starting to come down. That often then leads to more mistakes.
Absolutely, you can get yourself in a rut with that, in terms of you make one mistake and it leads into another with the way the corners flow. So one mistake is going to be potentially really costly. The gap now 2.3, so they're taking 7/10 on this point. So that gap's going to be coming down probably more over the next few laps, and hopefully the half dozen laps so we'll have them fighting for the lead.
Well, the next time we check in with that battle, it could be a full-on fight for the lead. But before we do that, let's head down to Bryn, who's just taking a walk around the arena.
Thanks very much there, Chris. Yeah, I'm just having a little wander around. to see how the teams are getting on, what's going on in each garage area, and I'll give you a kind of a play-by-play, a talk-by-talk. SMP Racing, they are kind of all alone right now. Their driver sitting in the rig, currently going up through Eau Rouge, running slightly wide on the inside, but never mind. Moving on to Baguette Racing, where they've got their one driver in the rig, and no sign of the rest of their team, actually. So it looks like they're taking it this time to maybe get away, get some fresh air, get some food, get some drink, get some sleep. Moving on to MAD Motorsport, where they got Kian in the rig, and Mariano is getting some shut-eye, some well-deserved shut-eye as well, actually, after that last race. Kitty Crew, one team member on display there in the rig. Same for the next two down here as well, for Advocatus Diabali and Williams Esports. They're all using the same method, really. One person in the rig, the other's getting some sleep or trying to. Mighty 38, the team of two. One in the rig, the other one AWOL at the moment. And I don't blame them either. They've really, really got to get this 12 hours maximum in the seat for each of these guys. We know it's 20.5 hours, so 20 and a half hours they're going to be racing. So they got at least 10 hours and 15 minutes each if they split it equally. Wildcats, well, they've got their guy in the rig. And, well, we've also got Jacob still here watching on, but he's sitting in front of the CMP Motorsport lot, keeping an eye on them right now. But he's got his eyes wide open, keep an eye on proceedings, keep it simple. Well, this is a team that have got one guy in the rig. We've also got Tobin just there. He's busy on his phone, so he's staying wide awake. Tyre Wall Racing, these are a team of three, but of course they are one guy in the rig. And I can't see anyone actually snoozing around their areas in their own garages. Veloci, the most active of the bunch. They're all kind of there looking very, very happy. I can tell you there is an area around the back, around the sides here, where some of the teams are getting to sleep, and I think that's where we might find them all huddled up. I'm just going to take a wander around. I'm not going to waken them up, I promise, but I'm just going to take a little wander around. We have got a couple of people asleep there, but they might be part of our team, actually, so I don't want to go and kick them awake at this point, even though it is 1:15. We've been on air since around 10:30 yesterday morning. So Friday morning, 10:30, we went on air. It is now 1:15 on Saturday morning, and we're still on air. And we're going to keep going on air until around, we're just gone 11 a.m. So it will be a over 24-hour broadcast. And then we have the small matter of the podium. The podium for our teams from race number 9. They'll be taking up the podium positions here on the iconic LeMans podium. And I'll keep an eye on the footage as we're going around here. So we've got cars going around at different points. I'm trying to find the gaps at the moment, see who's currently leading the way, see who's fighting. Baguette Racing in 5th at the moment, MAD in 10th. And CMP Motorsport in 3rd currently. And that's a really, really good performance from them at this stage. So CMP currently in 3rd. Just trying to hunt down their record so far. 5, 11, 8, 9, and 8. So that's what they've done for the 5 races so far that we've had. They're currently up in 3rd. So doing pretty well for this race here. Let's see if that continues. And if you've wondered how we got to this stage, from 20,000 people trying to get to Le Mans, whittling it down to 36 or 35 as it currently is, you're about to find out how.
The Le Mans Esports Series has seen over 20,000 drivers compete through 6 rounds online and in person at Fuji and Autosport International to bring us the super final, which is being held live at the 24 Hours of Le Mans. The top drivers from each round formed the first 6 teams, and competitors could also build their own team of 3 drivers to compete for a spot. To make the super final even more exciting, 2 wildcard teams, SMP Racing and Veloci Esports, have also joined the grid for the day's action. That's 12 teams, 36 drivers and a $100,000 prize pool up for grabs. There'll be 9 races spanning over 20 hours of track action over a 24-hour period, celebrating the history of the FIA World Endurance Championship, including a classic Le Mans start for the first and last race, where drivers will dash to their cockpits. Each team has an in-game budget of 150 million euros to put together their garage, so they'll need to choose their cars tactically to put themselves in the best chance throughout the day. Each race will be run in reverse grid order, so the team with the most points will start at the back of the grid and have to fight their way through the field. The first 8 races will determine the grid order for the final showdown, with every point being worth a 1-second head start, and not to mention cash prizes for podium finishes. For the final race, teams can win big from 6th position upwards with a fantastic $25,000 top prize for first place, plus an experience money can't buy, a chance for the top 3 teams to celebrate on the actual Le Mans 24-hour podium. It all comes down to this.
Yeah, there you go. So now you know how he got to this stage. If you'd like to find out more, if you think you've got what it takes to be here for the 2nd season of Le Mans Esports Series, go to LeMansEsports.com, LeMansEsports.com, and you'll find a nice little form that you can sign on to. And you get all the updates of what's been going on and how you can get involved at Le Mans for Season 2. Back to the commentary, a little change of scenery for Chris and for Harry.
Yep, we are. We've decided to sit down again. Oh, there we go. We can say that. It is getting a little bit later, but do you prefer this? I mean, it's...
I'm never going to say no to sitting down, Chris, let's be honest.
Especially after the shift you've put in.
Oh, I'm not going to mention that, don't worry about it. It's nothing.
Well, it's because Harry was complaining so much, so we had to get everyone out to move everything around. Are you happy now?
The only thing complaining is my back. I'm getting old.
You can talk. Yeah, let's get back into the race then. Great to have Bryn there around the arena, catching up on all the drivers, spying on whoever is sleeping as well, catching some of the crew sleeping as well. So not too sure who that was, but we'll have to make a note of that. But we'll have Bryn going around the arena as ever and catching up with all the teams as this race unfolds. There's still a long way to go in this one. Lap number 29 of 78 is where we are currently at this stage. There we can see MAD Motorsport just getting a little bit of a drift on, coming out of the final corner and down towards turn number 1. It's La Source, of course, as MAD Motorsport looking pretty tidy through there, so no such problems for them. But they will resume their race-long dispute with Keep It Simple very shortly, I'm sure, because guess what? Keep It Simple are closing in once again. They decide to drop away for a bit and then they decide to close in again. Here is Williams we're looking at now, 5th place, closing in on a couple of teams ahead. Let's see Williams as they go up down the Kemmel Straight, sorry. Now we've got 2 teams up ahead, and I think one is going to be a back marker, and is that going to be MAD? I think it is. In fact, that is Baguette Racing just ahead. The pair of them are going past MAD. So Williams in 5th place, trying to make further positions here, and we could see a battle about to start. Baguette Racing, of course, are in 4th place. So Williams trying to gain further positions and get nearer to that top 3. With that top 3, of course, comes money in every single race. Top 6 in the last one. So Baguette Racing are going to have to do a little bit of defensive driving now if they're going to hang on to this 4th place. Not a terrible amount of time back from this is Kitty Crew as well. So if these guys start battling a little bit too heavily, then we could see 3 cars in this battle for 4th place.
Yeah, it's something we've seen across multiple of the categories we've had so far in this series, where we've got 2 cars on track battling, and when they battle for too long, another car behind just sneaks up on them, and you've got a 3-way battle, which makes it so difficult for the car that is currently in second in this battle, but will then be in the middle of the three because they've got to try and overtake the car in front, but whilst trying to keep behind the car that they've got. So it's difficult for them to balance. So they'll be hoping they won't enter that kind of situation, but only time will tell.
Yeah, only time will tell. There's plenty of time to go still, and lots of time to see more battling around the Spa circuit. And good to see Spa listed for this particular race, particularly as in the World Endurance Championship this year. Of course, we had the Super Season, which has seen it stretch across a whole year and a bit. We visited Spa twice, so it was where we started the Super Season back last year. We visited Spa just a few weeks ago for the penultimate round as well. So I think it's good to have it on the listed for this particular race. It kind of makes sense, doesn't it? You know, GTE cars around Spa is what we're used to in WEC. Now we're used to it in the LeMans Esports Super Series.
Exactly, no, it's a classic track that pretty much any motorsport fan knows. But what's going to get interesting on track now is that we've got the Baguette Racing car on screen, but they're coming up to lap two of the Porsches, the Keep It Simple car and the MAD car. So whilst they're battling for position, the Baguette car's going to be trying to overtake them. They're not going to want to ease up from the battle that they're having to let that car through, but they have to. That's part of the rules. So it's interesting to see if the Baguette car's going to lose time to the Williams car that's trying to chase them down. So we've got two battles going on, but they're a lap apart.
Yeah, well, it's going to be interesting to see how they take this on. As you said, they're going to have to yield position, but at the same time limit the amount of time they either lose to the car ahead or behind. So it's going to be interesting, and we're already going to see the first phase of cars being lapped take place, because Baguette Racing have already gone past Keep It Simple. They definitely tried to get that one out early doors. In fact, MAD thought we're going to make that one simple at first, but in the end they decided to take on a little bit of a fight with Baguette Racing, so changing their minds at the last minute, and now Baguette Racing go after Keep It Simple. And I'll say a little bit surprised to see MAD actually going a little bit sideways and banging doors with the Baguette Racing car there, because they are being lapped, of course.
Yeah, it's one of those situations where they just let Baguette through, like what's going on screen now, where Keep It Simple have done exactly that. They've kept it simple. They let the car go, fall in behind it, carry on as you were, rather than going offline, dirting your tyres, getting out of shape. Doesn't make sense. Now the Williams car is trying to do the same, while the Baguette car, after doing all that, is now going to come into the pit lane anyway.
Yeah, well, Baguette Racing are in, so this is the first of the leading pit stops that we're going to see. Williams are now just going up the inside of MAD. Williams getting one lapped car out of the way, and once again MAD are deciding to just take on a little bit of a fight with a driver that has come up to lap them. So MAD, I think, signs of frustration perhaps.
Of course, as we said, they've won 3 of the 5 races so far. They're not going to enjoy being lapped, but it's part of the process. They picked this car knowing full well what was going to happen to them, so they've got to take their medicine and deal with it.
They have, and it may see them drop down the order in the standings, but that will mean that they start higher up the grid in the next race. Now, MAD Motorsport have talked a lot about them, and they're just going to be coming up against more lapped cars as this race goes on. This looks like Advocatus are now behind them. They're now stuck in the middle of the trio, battling over 10th place with Keep It Simple just ahead. And MAD Motorsport, who did lose time to Keep It Simple after being lapped, are now about to lose a position, I think, as here goes down the outside. I think that is Advocatus, and Advocatus are going to gain a position. So good driving there from Advocatus. We're seeing more changes being made now. In fact, that might be Kitty Crew, sorry, that is just getting through some traffic. Side by side we are now between MAD Motorsport and Keep It Simple. They're going to be side by side on the exit, and side by side up to the next corner as well.
Yeah, it's great racing between these guys. They're a lap down, but they don't care. They're just having fun battling each other. And there's a lot of respect being shown. I'm sure these guys probably know each other through the various competitions that they do, and playing online, of course. So although they're not fighting for much, obviously still a championship point at stake. So that's great for them to be fighting over. No money involved for the positions they're fighting for, but ultimately they're just putting on a good show and having fun, which is ultimately one of the main priorities of this series.
Yeah, well, in a long race like this, I imagine if you're going round towards the back, being lapped, if you're doing it on your own, 78 laps is going to turn into about 780 laps. So having someone to fight with, even if it's for 11th or 10th place, at least makes the time go by a little bit more quickly. Of
course, and it's a chance for them to work on racecraft for potentially future categories now, and get practice in for when they come to these cars again. Of course, they're probably not going to be in a prime position for the final race. They're probably going to find themselves at the back like they are here. But it's a chance for them to sharpen their skills, as I say, moving forward, practice their ability to race offline, try different tactics of racing, and just develop themselves as the series goes on. Because ultimately, they're getting to the stage now where they're going to be getting a bit tired. So having something to keep them occupied other than the driving itself, battling another car, keeps them sharp. So that's exactly what they're hoping for, and they've got it. So they're making the most of the opportunity.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. They need something to keep them alert other than regular trips to go and get a coffee. And this is exactly doing that. As you said, it's just keeping the brain a little bit occupied. It's giving them something to focus on. And that is exactly, as you said, what is going to be a benefit out of fighting for that, even if it does see them drop even further from the rest of the field. Veloce leading from Williams, so we are seeing some more pit stops being made, I believe. Veloce now leading Williams and by some distance, so it looks like we are into the pit stop phase now. Wildcats are in third place, so I think they may have had a trip into the pits, but we'll get confirmation on that as soon as we can. Veloce doing a great job out front though. Kitty Crew in fourth place, closing in on both Wildcats and the second place team as well. So we've got a close battle forming, it seems, for second place. There you can see Williams, it is of course second. Wildcats not far behind in third. We'll try and pick that up as soon as we can, but keep it simple as who we are on board with at the moment, with MAD just ahead of us. Brilliant circuit, isn't it, on board at Spa? Why don't you talk us through a few corners?
Of course, coming down into turn one, though, potentially an overtaking opportunity, but often the scene of plenty of carnage on the first lap of a race. A tight apex, focusing on the run out of it, because obviously you've got a long run through to Eau Rouge, climbing up the hill that they would do. We've got cars in the pit lane. Williams.
Why don't you talk us through the pit lane?
It's not as interesting as it sounds, to be honest.
Well, here we go up for Eau Rouge. Let's go back to the onboard.
Yeah, so it's keep it simple on board with Eau Rouge. Difficult corner in these cars because you can't go full throttle. You have to almost change down the gear. If you're in fifth, you need to go down to fourth. You get a bit of weight transfer as the car goes light over the crest. It's very easy to have a snap of oversteer or have it wash wide, but keeping it in check for a best run down Kemmel. Coming into the chicane, we've seen plenty of overtaking opportunities arrive. Most people actually fancying the outside line for overtaking there, which is quite interesting. But of course the racing line is to feed it through the line of least resistance and then firing it down the hill for the scene of instant at the start of the race, as there's another overtaking opportunity as you go down the hill into the hairpin. So as you can see, the car ahead is a reference point for us, so they're trying to find their own turn-in points and braking points, but when you've got a car in front, it's always difficult to spot them. It's an off-put for them, so it's difficult for them to do, especially with fast corners like Pouon. Again, you're braking a straight line, then feeding the car in, very easy to get a snap of oversteer if you're a bit too aggressive with it. And again, running wide is always a potential for them, so they're trying to carry as much speed through there as they can. It's a corner that rewards that kind of thing. As we say, we skip forward a few corners, got Veloce just up the road, and I believe that is the Wildcats car, so that's the battle for first and second. They've just made a pit stop, the Veloce team. The swap driver James has hopped out, so they're now about a second and a half apart on track. Battle resumes.
Well, thank you for your insights there on the onboard. We'll get more of that as we go into this race. Of course, Harry with us for the remainder of it, and Kitty Crew have gone into 5th place ahead of the Williams car, who we're looking at now, and Williams just running a little bit wide there. We can see Kitty Crew ahead of us, but as you said, the battle for the lead couldn't be much closer. Wildcats are only 0.6 of a second back from Veloci, so a battle for the lead definitely about to take place. And there we can see our 2 leaders now. We pick up Wildcats, who are going to be in the tow of Veloci as we head down the Kemmel Straight for the 34th time. Eau Rouge comes before that course, and now we go left, right, uphill, and then through the left again, and a good run through there for Wildcats leaves them in a very good position to perhaps challenge Veloci up to Les Combes. Don't think this will be the lap. This could be a dress rehearsal rather than a completed move up here, just to see how good they are on the brakes in comparison to the Veloci Esports team. And it's going to be, it could be round the outside where we see a move being made there, as Harry talked about on the onboard lap. Through into the hairpin we go. Veloci seem to have settled down since coming back out of pit lane. And have just stabilised the gap at now 0.6 of a second over Wildcats. CMP are still in 3rd place at the moment, but they are way back from this. This is the fight for the lead between Veloci and the Wildcats team. And it's CMP and Baguette 3rd and 4th. Veloci just look to be pulling away on this lap at the moment. We'll get a live gap for you. Look at the top of your screen, you'll see, there you can see it's up to 0.9 of a second. So Veloci having a very good lap here, under pressure. This had to be a qualifying lap, this, from Veloci, didn't it? To make sure they try and get a gap over Wildcats, and Noah Schmidt's doing a very good job. Of
course, Noah's just jumped in the car, taking over from James, so he's just trying to get himself into a rhythm, settle down, but it's very difficult to do that when you've got a car right behind you, and that's exactly what Wildcats are doing there, putting the pressure on, making the new driver a bit nervous, making him not settle in as easy as he would like. But at the moment he's holding his nerve, he's got that sort of little buffer where he's not going to come under any pressure into the braking zones. The car will get close, no natural for the car in front of him braking earlier, but on the exit of the corner he'll see that car in his rearview mirror get smaller as he gets the acceleration down a bit earlier. But it looks like he's lost a bit of time through that final chicane, speaking of which, and the gap 0.3 of a second. So now we are in the region where a potential overtaker move is on with late braking, a bit of a lock up, but coming down through the exit of La Source into Eau Rouge, over Radion, and then into that Kemmel Straight. That's where the overtaking opportunity might present itself.
Well, let's see if that happens. Wildcats, we're looking back at them from Veloci now as we come up through Eau Rouge. Wildcats, oh well, it was certainly both teams abusing track limits at different points through Eau Rouge, one on the exit and one just at the end of Eau Rouge, and now it sees the gap at 3.5 tenths, so it went up ever so slightly after that. They've got to be careful here. It's evident that they are pushing very hard. Wildcats are a little bit closer than they were last time. Is it going to be 3rd time lucky, I wonder, next time we get to Les Combes, or are we going to see a move around a different part of the circuit? Let's see. We go back on board with the Wildcats team. Veloci up ahead. Oh, and a little bit of a tap there from Shoma Takaya on the rear bumper of the Veloci car, with Noah Schmidt in the seat. Wildcats now come into Pouon. Back at them again, they're getting closer and closer. Veloci are going to have to think about defending now. It may only be lap number 35 of 78, but if they want to be leading going into lap number 36, and they are certainly going to have to think about defending from the Wildcats team, who are really piling on the pressure now as we come out of the right-hander and now make our run down towards Blanchimont and then the chicane. Big overtaking opportunity, of course, at the chicane, and it leads straight into another at La Source. Let's see if we see changes at either of those two corners. Wildcats getting closer and closer. Veloci doing a good job to hold on, though. They've not made any real mistakes apart from that track limits at Eau Rouge last time, but nevertheless Wildcats are going to try this one. They send it down into the final chicane. Veloce had to just give them a little bit of space. They had absolutely no option but to do so. Wildcats, that was a bold attempt at a move. It was never really going to work, but somehow they have been able to draw side by side with Veloce. As a result of all of that, they're not going to be able... Oh, and Veloce there, contact with Wildcats. They've run the car wide. Wildcats are going to be on the inside here going into Eau Rouge, and it looks as if Wildcats are going to take the lead. Veloce trying to squeeze them, but I think Wildcats just about take the lead.
They have. I'm sure the adjudicators probably want to take a look at that, because I say essentially the move's being completed off the racetrack on the outside of the source, but they're fighting it out still for now. Veloce in at the slipstream, trying to get whatever drag they can get removed from the car, and they're not going to have any opportunity to outbrake them. They show covering the middle of the racetrack, good defensive driving there, but so we still need to see if there's going to be any investigation into the initial overtake itself.
Yeah, I wonder if it's an idea here for Wildcats to just let Veloce back through. I mean, to be fair to Wildcats, both teams really did take the track limits to a bit of another level. Well, Wildcats have got into the lead of the race. Veloce have dropped to second place. Whether that will change, whether the race control staff will change that, we'll wait to see. But at the moment, we'll go with what we have, and that is that we have a new race leader in Wildcats, Veloce in second. Track limits once again, unfortunately, being abused there from the Veloce team. SMP, I wonder if they, how much they caught in all of that. We'll have a look at the gap next time it rolls round. Let's see at the top of the screen. Now they are at 20 seconds, so nothing to worry about really, but CMP themselves could have something to worry about because they are being caught from Baguette Racing, but we'll come back to that in a little bit later in the race once we've got this one sorted out. Wildcats ahead of us. Don't think Veloce are done with them just yet. Veloce then, as we come through Blanchimont up towards the chicane, are they going to try the same move Wildcats did last time with a dive down the inside? Wildcats wise to it, sorry, and defend into the chicane. Now we go up towards La Source, and a good exit there for the Wildcats team.
Yeah, the Wildcats car just looks so impressive on the brakes. It's going to be very difficult to Veloce to make any kind of move on them with the braking performance and braking confidence they seem to have in that thing. I think that's pretty much not a done deal for now, but Veloce have got to work hard to try and get themselves in a position to make that move back if they can, but no better way of doing it than picking up a slipstream down the straight into a braking zone, which is what they're coming up to in just a moment.
You can see Jacob Bokert from the Wildcats team heading in the direction of race control, but no conversations being had at the moment between the team and race control. Certainly nothing that I have seen, but there could be messages being delivered on the screen to Wildcats. We'll wait and find out, as we said. But essentially it's almost a carbon copy of what we were seeing before, albeit with positions reversed. It is now Wildcats who lead the fight, with Veloce in second place. CMP are third place at the moment, but as we said, they are pretty far back at the moment. Well, if you're enjoying this one, and I don't see any reason why you shouldn't be, fantastic battle for the lead. Make sure you do get in touch with us via our handle at LeMans Esports. It'd be great to hear your thoughts. Who are you cheering on for? What do you think of the racing? What do you think of the moves you're seeing? Who do you think was at fault there, if anyone? Wildcats versus Veloce around Spa in the Modern GTE, the big story of this race at the moment. Are you cheering for anyone further down the field who you think could come into play a little bit later on in this series? What are your predictions for overall winners? All questions to be answered via at LeMans Esports. Get us your thoughts and reactions in. We'll get the conversation going on there. I know some of our teams have been active on there, as has us staff as well, so do get in touch with us, and let's get LeMans Esports getting talked about worldwide. Well, we're looking back at Veloce Esports, and they are staying within a touching distance here of the Wildcats team, and the Wildcats are going to give them the position back. Well, there you go. That was certainly instructed to them by race control, I imagine. it looks as if, in fact, I can see is that the Veloce team speaking to the Wildcats team. I think the two teams actually speaking to each other. In fact, I think that might be the Williams team who's actually over chatting to them. But the Wildcats team have given the place back, and I think that's what needed to be done.
Yeah, I think it's sensible. It's a case of, I could see while you were talking, there was some movement going on down there, some heated discussion. But I don't think they were happy about the decision, but it was correct. They were forced. Both of them went out wide. Veloce got back on the racetrack, and Wildcats just made the move while off the circuit, and you can't do that kind of thing. They need to make it legally. So, the good news for them is they look like they've got the faster car, the faster package. So they're still in a position to try and make that move again, but this time get it done nice and cleanly.
Well, I think I can see someone from race control down there actually chatting to the team at the moment. So, Wildcats have been told the reason, and now they just have to get on with it, unfortunately. Down to the right-hand side of your screen, that is where both Veloce are set up there, right at the bottom of your picture, and towards the pit outside there in the middle of your screen. Further down that side is where the Wildcats team up. And you can see in the arena, they've all got their own garages to the teams, but they all are able to walk around and go and chat to each other when a situation like this presents itself. So it is the beauty of the layout. You don't have to run down an entire pit lane to go and speak to another team. You can just walk across the hallway in the arena and you are there.
Exactly, and I say, looking down the pit garages now, there's a lot of commotion around the Wildcats garage. So we've got Bryn on his way down there. I think he's going to try and grab some of the team members to have a quick chat, see what their reaction is in regards to whether it's a penalty or whether they consciously gave the decision back. But Bryn, over to you to find out the details.
Much there, Harry. Yeah, I am with Jacob here from Wildcats to find out really what happened there, because dubious goals committee is what we think. We're looking at it. Why did you have to give that place back?
We got told as he didn't have a significant portion of his car alongside the Veloce car, and when he went around the outside, he was on the outside. He tried overtaking when he was on the curb, but so it's outside of the track, and that's why they had to give it back. When I watched it the first time, I just thought, he just got ran wide and carried on going. But I can't argue with the decision. It's already been made, so it is what it is. I reckon he can take the position back.
So you're kind of in agreement with the race control, or are you in disagreement but you just don't want to? You want to be polite?
The second one.
The second one. So there you go. I thought that might be the case. Yeah, very, very well put there. So I'm landing you in trouble, no one else. Yeah, I'm going to stick my neck out on this one, and I'm going to say, from my point of view, he was wide, yes, but I thought he was run wide, and there was nowhere for him to go. So unusual, but that's why I don't make the decisions. It's a tricky one, but Jacob, very, very careful with what he just said. But Wildcats having to give that position back, and well, still a long race to go. There's a lot of damage as well to the Veloce car. Back to you.
Well, great to hear the reaction there from the Wildcats team. Thank you, Bryn, for getting over there and speaking to Jacob Bokit. Well, clearly, of course, in disagreement, but at the same time, taking it on the chin, the Wildcats team. As Jacob said, they know that Takaya can get back into the lead, or at least that's how they see the next part of the race going. So somehow they're going to have to tell him about that, because as we said, there is a huge language barrier in that team when it comes to Takaya. But for Takaya, he'll just know that he has to now go back and try and take the lead. That's good news for us, though, because we get to see it all play out once again.
Exactly, and it's a case of they probably felt it was a bit unfair on their side, but there's no point arguing it. It's a decision that's been made. If they get hung up on it, then they're going to be in a position where their driver might not be able to get it back into the rhythm. And now he's now fired up even more. Now he's made the move once. He's now got to try and do it again. He knows he's the quicker car. He knows he's the quicker driver at this stage. So he's just got to try and capitalise on his skills and his ability and not let the decision affect him.
Well, from your racing experience, Harry, I imagine you perhaps have been put in a situation like this at times. I saw you out on the rig, and you look like you. Yeah. Well, that's pretty much what I saw. But I imagine you, at some stage, you you've been put in a position like this or similar to this, how do you now regroup? How does a driver regroup from this and not start going on to just make mistakes and fall further back? But how do you get yourself together, recatch the car ahead, and then overtake it?
It's the belief in yourself. Shane will be sat in that car knowing that he's made the move himself. He's already caught that gap, made the move. Also, it was illegal, so he's had to give it back. But he knows he's faster. He knows he can do it. So he's got to basically harness that ability and energy he's got about his own belief and ability. Take on the penalty that he's been given in terms of giving the position back, and then just use it to move forward. Regain the time he's lost and try and focus on making that move again, because he knows he can do it. That's the thing. It's not a case of he's got a penalty for failing an attempt and taking the car out. He made the move. It was slightly off the track. It was an unfortunate collision that led to it, but ultimately he should be in a position in a few laps to hopefully try and give us some entertainment of the similar kind.
And on the flip side, I guess Veloce, they know the kind of Wildcats' game plan, or Takai's game plan, where he likes to try his overtaking. How do they now change their approach to this?
It's difficult because Showman seems to be very good on the brakes. We've seen it into some of the hard braking zones. He can brake a lot later and a lot deeper, and he seems to be able to still get the car stopped at the same rate as the Veloce car does. So it's difficult to defend against that, because you can defend the inside all you want, but we've seen people firing down the outside and making the move stick. So he's almost defenceless to a point, but if he can just drive cleanly at this point and try and keep the gap large enough so Showman's not in a position to make the outbraking manoeuvre. Say a good example there, look how good that car is on the brakes to close that gap entirely almost. So it's a position where the Veloce car needs to try and keep the gap as large as possible to make sure that he doesn't fall into the window of being susceptible of an outbraking manoeuvre from the Wildcats team.
Well, this is great stuff, because we've got one of our wildcards and our team qualify, one of our wildcard teams, a team who are a team known within the esports community in Veloce, versus an individual team who have never met each other before. 3 drivers from 3 different regions who have come together now for this event, met here for the first time, and they are taking it to the Veloce team. And I do hope that all these drivers who are racing together in these individual teams stay in touch and perhaps even come back as a team in another year. So Wildcats doing a great job, but enough of that, because look at the gap, 0.7 of a second. Wildcats have I think pretty much completed the mission of closing Veloce in. They are now just a car length behind, if that, and Veloce are going to be in a little bit of trouble next time we get down towards the chicane. Wildcats will not want to sit around this time. Unfortunately, the first time they overtook and completed the move on Veloce, they were forced to give it back. Now they'll want to take that move and take it with conviction and go on to win this race. Is Wildcats going to be able to make the move into the chicane? Well, they're certainly going to give it a go, but Veloce were just able to get across and cover it in the end. Right through the chicane we go, now down towards the right-hander. It's going to lead us all the way through Blanchimont and down through the chicane as well, and Veloce are going to have to defend, because as we saw and as Harry was talking about in the last lap, you can just see how good Wildcats are on the brakes going into that final chicane, so they can make a move from a hell of a long way back going into there. Veloce will know that, and I wonder if they're going to go defensive this time around. This is the CMP fight we're just going to switch to now between CMP and Kitty Crew. This is quite an important battle because that's over 4th place, but back to our leaders. We can see that Veloce are still in the lead coming onto the start-finish straight, going on to lap number 42. But when we went on board with our second place car, Wildcats, we did see that they had tried some sort of move down the inside, but 2 battles to try and follow at once here. CMP look like they're in danger of losing a position, and I think that they have. That looks like Kitty Crew going round the outside. Kitty Crew perhaps holding station rather than gaining position, but nevertheless Kitty Crew out of that are 4th. CMP are in 5th place, and a good little battle going on between those two, which we hope will continue. But Veloce now have a 7.5 lead, so clearly they got a much better run through Eau Rouge than Wildcats did.
Absolutely, we know they're good on the brakes, but they were nowhere to be seen in terms of making a move into that corner. So SMP is worth noting because they were third not too long ago, but during the battles that we've seen with Wildcats and Veloce, they lost the place to Big At Racing, who were promoted to third. They've now just lost that place, the fourth place to Kitty Crew, so they're up into fourth. Now they're SMP down to fifth, so the race kind of deteriorating quite quickly for them. So they've gone from potentially having money on the table at the end of the race to now being in fifth and not looking like they're going to be able to challenge and take the race forward from this point. So it's just about collecting as many championship points as they can to take forward ahead of the final race later.
We've said it once before, we'll say it again, it's just damage limitation, isn't it? Every point is that second gap when we get to the start of race number 9. Race number 9 will be a Le Mans start as well, and it's going to be fantastic when we get into later this morning and get that last race underway and then take our top 3 off to the podium, the Le Mans podium, and they'll be on there as the grid is forming up around them. So it's going to be fantastic, but we've still got a lot of racing to go between now and then. And Veloce are in the lead of race number 6 of 9 at the moment, but Wildcats behind them are getting even closer here as we go up to La Source. So last time we went through this section of the circuit, Shoma Takaya had dropped back from Veloce. Let's see if that is the same case on lap number 43. Equally matched through the hairpin, it's fair to say. But Noah Schmitz ahead, just trying to do the best he can to hold on to the lead for as long as possible for the Veloce team. Right through Eau Rouge. Do we both get a clean run? Pretty much. In fact, I'd say Wildcats were slightly faster there. That's a nod of conviction there from Harry and Veloce. Although they may have lost a tiny bit of time, they've been able to hold on to the lead from Wildcats. That said, Veloce making a mistake under braking going into Les Combes, and this is it. This is the opportunity for Wildcats now. Can they take it? Going down towards the hairpin. They're going to look to the outside. Oh no, but caught on the grass there. Wildcats, was that a case of nowhere to go or just taking the wrong side in making that move?
It was difficult because they were on the edge of the circuit already, but it looked like the Wildcat car wanted to almost go off the circuit again to try and get past down that left-hand side. I don't know, they seem to be making it quite difficult for themselves to try and get this move done. It was never going to work to drive off track even further and use the grass to try and make a gap for them to squeeze into. Ideally, they'd be looking to just swing it far right as they could on the exit, try and get up the inside into the hairpin, and if Veloce were to defend that, they can use that better braking performance to try and swing it around the outside and hold it there. But neither happened. They've got into the grass, lost time again, and they're now back where they were, where they have been for the last few laps, which is on the tail of Veloce, hoping to try and get a run, as I think Veloce just clipped the gravel on the run through Stavlo, which is going to give, and Wildcats getting loose through that right-hander. It's so difficult to keep the car in check there, and when you do that, you lose a lot of momentum, as you can see. So again, they're in a position where that out-braking performance they've got isn't going to be as effective as they'd hope.
Through Blanchimont we go and up towards the chicane. We can see Veloce ahead of us, and this is a situation we've now been in for a number of laps. Veloce versus Wildcats for the lead. It did change, but it was changed back by the race direction after the move from Wildcats for the lead was deemed illegal. So Wildcats were put back to second, and in going back into second, lost a lot of time in the process. 1.7 seconds was the gap when they did so, and over around 2-3 laps they were able to close that gap back down, and we now find ourselves in a battle for the lead once again, and that's exactly what we want to see. It's a fantastic battle we've got going on here in the Modern GTE class. Up and down the field, plenty of fights going on. We had Keep It Simple and MAD Motorsport right down the back of the field, changing positions numerous occasions. Baguette Racing are now in third place, just behind behind the top two, because they are some distance back in terms of gaps. 21 seconds is the gap at the moment. Kitty Crew are in fourth place, and it's CMP, Williams Tyre Wall and Mighty 38, then SMP Advocatus keep it simple and MAD. But the leaders still close together. 44 laps now we're about to complete of 78, and there's still nothing to choose between the top two. And is that rain starting to fall? Yes, it is. Well, Spa always does throw up changeable conditions. Rain can fall at any time, and it has done. This is going to turn the race on its head potentially, Harry.
Absolutely. We need to find out how intense this rain is going to be. Because obviously we start getting puddles forming, we get aquaplaning. See it on the inside of that corner there and on the exit as well. These cars, when they go through big puddles like that, it can grab the wheels, start rotating the car in the way you don't want it, and you can aquaplane completely and have no turning at all. So it's going to be a moment of keeping the car on the black stuff if they can, but also figuring out how much grip they're going to have, where the puddles start forming, to make sure they can make the most of these conditions, and who is going to benefit. That's what we need to find out.
Well, Veloce are the car that are going to hit. Oh, and there we can see the first mistake made under braking. Well, I think Shoma Takaya finding out that you can't brake in exactly the same position as you can in the dry. Brilliant on the brakes, but I think a little bit too good on the brakes that time, a little bit too ambitious in these conditions. This is what we're going to see a lot though, isn't it? Drivers just finding the limit now in the wet conditions. How do you react to this, Harry? Rain starting to fall in the middle of a race, you're in a great position where you're fighting for the lead. All of a sudden you've made one mistake, car ahead is disappearing off in the distance, and you've got to try and get used to the conditions as well as close that gap.
Of course, and it's always interesting because normally it's the car that gets to the conditions first, i.e. the Veloce car, who's going to have to try and manage the conditions, judge what they're going to be, and usually the car behind can sort of base what they see and use it for themselves to make a better job of it. But at the moment, it's the car following. That seems to be struggling this again for the third braking zone in a row. That Wildcats car going too deep, and this is exactly what Veloce needed. And they can sort of breathe a sigh of relief as their driver Noah seems to be just taking it a bit easier and just finding the limits slowly rather than just firing it into these corners and losing all the time like Wildcats are.
Yeah, Veloce now, this I've got to say, very impressive adaptability here that we're seeing from the Veloce team. Noah Schmitz in the car from them has kept cool under pressure and has adapted to these conditions very, very well. A lot better than Shoma Takaya has for the Wildcats team. Unfortunately, those guys are now around 3 seconds back from the Veloce team. This could see changes up and down the field though. Is this going to lend itself to the likes of the Porsche cars and the Ferrari cars? Surely this gives them more of a chance now to start battling with the BMWs?
Potentially, no. There's more variability in the driving conditions, so you can try and make a bit of difference. I think ultimately the car limitations are still going to be a hindrance to them, but in terms of actual teams themselves, it looks like Williams in 6th, you can see at the top of the screen. Within half a second behind them is tyre wall. They're coming at them, and they're going to be trying to use these conditions to try and basically find an advantage that they maybe didn't have in the dry. It's completely changed the race on its head. We've had a lot of dry running. People have found out who's fast in what conditions, but now, as you can see, tyre wall right on the back of Williams, and we're going to find out out of these two who's going to be finding the limit and who's going to be going over it to their penalty.
Well, tyre wall have closed right in, as you said. They are certainly enjoying the changeable conditions at the moment. And tyre wall could be lining up a move on Williams here, but of course these conditions are going to make overtaking even more tougher now, aren't they?
Of course, what it does do is it increases the braking zone, so you've got a larger time to be on the brakes, which means you're almost more encouraged to go deep on the brakes if you can. They say they're all struggling to try and get the cars slowed down. Williams, again wide, and here comes tyre wall up the inside, clipping that puddle on the inside and making sure they don't lose the car. That Williams car might still be on the outside, but they look like they've made it through for now. Make sure they need to hold on to it as they come to the... Oh, no, there goes the Williams car back through. So as we say that, we've got the tyre wall car clipping the grass away, and you can see how much of an effect that had on the handling of the car. It's like fishtailing around just by the smallest trip to the grass. But Williams back in front, but how long will that be for? We can see they're both struggling. Everyone seems to be struggling under braking, but it's going to be a case of who can manage that best.
Well, it looked as if tyre wall gave the place back there. They just seemed to slow up down the straight. Kiyoshi Matsusaka perhaps not happy with the move himself, and just getting the task of, or the job, sorry, of letting Williams back through out and done early. So I wasn't expecting to see that from Kiyoshi, but Williams nevertheless, whatever it was that led to that happening, are now back into 6th place, but that doesn't mean they're going to stay there for very long, because Tyrewall Racing are still right on their tail then as we head down the Kemmel Straight for the 46th time. This is your battle for 6th place that we are watching now. You can see the positions further down. We've got SMP Racing, Keep It Simple, MAD and Advocatus. Nothing changing between our leaders at the moment. The only thing that may be changing is the gap between them, because it's up to 3 seconds, but ahead of us Williams have made a mistake. They've gone off the track on their own accord, and that has seen Tyrewall Racing go into 6th place. Strange mistake it looked to me, that one.
Yeah, it's just that transition of going from right to left and then swinging it back into the right, and they just got carried away with the momentum, dragged them onto the AstroTurf and eventually the grass, and once they're on there they've got no turn in, so it was a slam dunk move for Tyrewall at that point.
Yeah, well, a rare mistake from the Williams team, but if you're watching, wherever you're watching from around the world, don't forget we are into the early hours of Saturday morning now, and certainly there could be an effect that is starting to come in on the drivers now. They have been racing since 11 o'clock on Friday, and as we go into the early hours of Saturday, definitely I think fatigue could be setting in. Not just, of course, physically, but mentally more so as well when you're, of course, racing in esports. That is what it is all about, just that mental game, and concentration levels do start to drop at this time in the race, doesn't it?
Yeah, and it's these kind of conditions where, if it was dry, they get into a rhythm, they know what they're doing, lap after lap. But these changeable conditions where it's raining more and more, it's a case of they've got to keep on edge every single lap, every single corner, because the grip levels are changing. So it's a case of trying to adapt to it. So we're trying to keep an eye on the rain to see if it's still falling quite heavily. Williams car coming into the pit lane now, which I guess is for a mandatory pit. There's a bit of a
what's happened there?
I think the Tyrewall car might have actually had an incident trying to come into the pit lane, which has then dropped them behind the Williams car who's made it through unscathed. And it's a strange incident. I mean, it's not uncommon to see cars making mistakes on the way into the pit lane, but we've seen one there, and it's cost them a position.
Yeah, well, Tyrewall quite literally found the Tyrewall going into the pit lane, unfortunately, and they've lost a position in the pits, before they even get to the pit box. So, an unfortunate error there for Tyrewall Racing, and as you can see, there goes the Williams car. They're going to take that place straight back. So frustrating mistake, that one. That's probably, I'd say, just the rush of trying to get in the pits as quick as possible.
Possibly. I'm looking at the team now, they don't seem too happy with what's going on. I don't know if there's maybe communication error, because obviously it can happen in these teams where you've got multi-nations available, so we don't know exactly what's going on, but they don't look happy with what's happened. Obviously, whether it's their own teammate that they're unhappy with, or if it's something outside of that factor that we've got to try and look into as to what's caused the issue. But from what we can see, Williams guys have benefited from it. They've had a pit stop. They've just got to get back into the rhythm, try and find where the grip is, and then carry on from where they were.
Well, it could just be a case, isn't it, of a last-minute dash into the pits, or, we've got something going on track you've just seen there from Williams.
Yeah, they're still running deep. They've had 3 or 4 laps now to get used to these conditions, or try and get used to them, but they're still running wide in all the braking zones, which is costing them valuable time. They've gained a free position in the pit stop, and you can see they're struggling to get these cars slowed down. They are difficult conditions, don't get me wrong, though. It's not as easy as it was when it was dry, when they're used to those certain braking points, certain turn-in points, lap after lap. But you see in the background, you've got cars sliding and drifting around corners because of the wet weather. It's just such a knife edge for these guys. This
is the first time, certainly, that I've seen the super final drivers being tested in these conditions, and what a time for us to put them to the test in it. Race number 6, 48 laps into a 3-hour endurance in the GT cars around Spa as well, and it couldn't be any more difficult, I don't think, at the moment.
No, and especially with the time of day it is, with the early hours of the morning. No, it's the biggest challenge that they could have faced, and they're having to face it now. It's when it matters and when it counts. So maybe some of these guys have done some practice ahead of time to make sure they're prepared for all eventualities, because it was always going to be possible that this would happen, and they've got a short turnaround time to get on top of it, because if they don't, they're going to be off in the wall, and that could be the end of their race. So they've got to be on their wits' end to try and make sure they can navigate these conditions and see them through, whether they last or whether we get another change later on in the race we'll have to keep an eye out for.
Well, something's definitely happened up front, because Veloce are 31 seconds clear of Wildcats now. Surely that's a pit stop inflicted.
I'd imagine so,
yeah. pit stops now. They're coming in. Do you reckon this stage would be good for a driver change? There might be one of the drivers that is more used to driving in these conditions, might have had more practice with these cars in these conditions. So I guess for some teams this is the perfect time to come in and make a required pit stop.
Yeah, I mean, if you've got a wet weather specialist in your team, now is the time to do it. But it's one of them things where they need to make sure they're comfortable to come into these conditions.
Well, we can see there is the Williams team. They are 7th place at the moment. Veloce are leading the way. SMP Racing, well, a little bit further down the field. They are the sole Ferrari out there at the moment. 9th place for them. Here's a little bit more information about the SMP Racing team.
Yeah, thanks very much there, guys. SMP Racing currently out there at the moment. I'm trying to find their position on track. 9th is where they currently stand. Just wondering how the teams are coping with tiredness, because as we move into the wee small hours, it's just gone 2 a.m. here in France at LeMans. So I'll get a few words with some of these drivers, these teams, see how they're getting on. Evan is just having a chat right now with his Kitty Crew teammate. Not sure if they're changing over right now. Just going to find out. So here's Evan. How are you getting on here? Changeable weather conditions. We know it's now raining, and that has thrown a few of the drivers kind of off from where they were.
I love the rain. I ended up, gaining a little bit of time in the rain, so it really worked out well for me.
Right, but we've seen braking points suddenly change, the cars act slightly differently, they become a little bit skittish when before they were very planted. So for you it might be working okay. Have you noticed some people struggling, and of course fatigue setting in now, people getting very, very tired?
Yeah, there are definitely some people struggling out there, a few more off tracks, more than normal. I noticed that the green stuff is now a lot more slippery. The cornering speed is way down. You have to brake in a lot more places than you had to before, and of course earlier.
So is this it for you with driver changes and pit stops now? Do you have to go in for any more pits? I'm looking, what have you got, about another 29, 30 laps to go?
Yeah, we've got 2 more pit stops left. Actually, it might just be 1, but Dan's going to take it to the end. Yeah, just 1 pit stop. Dan's going to take it to the end, and he might be able to catch up to 3rd place here. That'd be wonderful.
And how are you coping with the hours, with how long you've been in competition for?
I feel pretty good. You always feel better after you get out of a stint, of course, after, being awake for that long and, focused for that long. But I'm sure I'm going to crash in the next few minutes, and hopefully I can get some sleep.
Lovely. Well, you rest up, okay? When he says crash, I think he means figuratively, not actually any other kind. Having a look around as well, well, Jacob, staying true to form, he's staying awake. He's over there texting right now. We've got a few other drivers taking it easy. And Tyre Wall, all 3 of them are awake, all 3 of them chatting away as well. Aaron, how are you lot getting on with the wet, with the rain?
Well, Goki seems to be the expert in the rain. Billy just has a newfound love for the rain, so we're kind of, getting him in between pits, so they're alternate right now, but we're getting to the point where tiredness is kicking in for everybody. But this is a long 3-hour race for these guys.
It's a really, really long time, but it's also a really long time for everyone, because even if you're not racing, you've got to somehow keep fresh, so when it is your turn to get in the rig, you're not having to switch your brain into gear.
Well, some of the other drivers that we're racing against, they've had like a 2-hour kip, and they say they feel worse for it. So I really don't want to take that chance, because I'm up next. I'm up in the 9:19, where I could hopefully get some money for the team as well.
That would be nice. I'm just looking at the time. So it's 2:10. We expect to finish around 11 a.m. with all the races. So we've got a long, long time to go. We're still around 7 hours off.
Yeah, 7 hours is a long, long time. Anything can happen. We haven't had the greatest of starts, but I think the higher class cars is where we see the most, and we've got 2 P-class cars coming up next.
You got 1 podium earlier on race 3, a couple of 10s, a 7 and a 9. So you got a little bit of money in your pocket. You got $2,000 there. It would be nice to build on it.
It would be nice. I mean, the poor results that we've had, it's just been unlucky. We've been including incidents really early on, but like Goki and Billy have been really pulling it out for us, really pulling out the bag. They've been climbing back up the grid for us. So we're trying to finish on the top 6 for the final race.
For the final, so this one here at the moment, we are, lap 50 of 78, 28 laps to go, well, including where we are, and 7th at the moment, only about 500 foot off of 6th place. So once you get there, you could go in. And actually looking at Williams, the way they've been performing, they seem to be tripping themselves up at the moment.
Well, they just had Roadrunner in. I know that Roadrunner wasn't confident in the wreck, but they got 7 back in, so it's going to be very hard to recover that distance.
Right, okay, we'll keep an eye on that, and thank you very much indeed. Hopefully you'll be nice and fresh when it's time to get in the sim. Back to you two. Hopefully that gave you a bit of a rest as well, because Chris and Harry have been awake for a long time. Harry seems to have been like Superman without the cape.
Well, there we go.
That's very kind of him.
Yeah. He didn't give me a compliment. I remember that. Well, back to the race. Veloce leading by around 26 seconds at the moment. We had Breen catch up with Tyre Wall, and Tyre Wall there in 7th place at the moment, just talking about how they've got drivers getting used to those wet conditions and getting on with them a little bit better than they expected to. And well, when you're put in a situation like this, of course, big prizes up for grabs, perhaps the most important race that these guys have ever done. Very hard to try and adapt to the wet conditions, but I think that just makes it all the more impressive with the situation they're in.
Absolutely. You know, speaking to Aaron there, you know, it sounds like those guys are loving the conditions. They're relishing the opportunity that they've got, and that's the best thing that you can have. You know, people normally think, oh no, the rain's coming down, it's going to get difficult. But when you've got people on your team who are literally like, yeah, throw me in the car, I'll deal with it. As long as it's not overconfidence and they go and ride it off within 1 lap, then that's the main thing. But you know, they're doing a great job. Now, we've seen them make an overtaking move, obviously with the help of the pit lane incident and everything that went on. Obviously, I think they lost the position to Williams during that. They're now on the road to recovery to try and get that position back if they can. But you know, they've got guys in the car who love driving in the wet. We're going to have to wait and see if they can close that gap, but I wouldn't put it past them to do so.
Yeah, well, this is SMP Racing we're looking at now, who are being lapped, that looks like, by Baguette Racing. SMP Racing just making that transition very easy, allowing Baguette Racing to put another lap on them. As we mentioned, they are in the Ferrari 458, and it was in 2011 we saw the Ferrari 458 introduced, and it became a car that went on to do great things. The same year it finished 2nd at Le Mans in the GTE Pro class with Giancarlo Fisichella. We had Tony Villander in it as well, and Gianmaria Bruni taking it to class victory the next year. So immediately the Ferrari 458's impact on Le Mans was successful. And that result would be repeated with the 2014 model, which we are, of course, using in this race. However, since then, they have not won Le Mans, although AF Course, the team who run the car, did win both the drivers' and manufacturers' titles in the FIA World Endurance Championship in the GTE Pro class, and that was in 2017 with the new 488 GTE. And that was repeating their success of 2013 and 2014. So the Ferrari, a very good car in this class, particularly in 2014. Previous drivers for the AF Corsa team include the likes of Jean Alesi as well. So they've had some fantastic drivers in the car for them. A great history in the World Endurance Championship and at Le Mans as well. And I think it will make sense that we have it here in the Modern GTE class.
Of course, and it goes back to the point you were making earlier about, you know, the drivers that come into Le Mans and come into WEC to take part. And you listed 2 there that I know very well from the Formula 1 team. You know, Giancarlo Fisichella, John Alesi. Yeah. They made primarily their name in Formula 1, then they come over to a series like this, and they go and deliver race wins and drives and everything like that in these kind of cars. It's great, and Now, when you mention Ferrari and Le Mans, there's always, you think of the history. We started off this series with early 60s prototypes, Ford versus Ferrari. It's because of the pedigree that Ferrari had initially starting out, and there's always that pressure you feel that when there's a Ferrari on the grid, it should be doing well, no matter what the class it's in, what category it's in. And as you read out, 2014, they've done just that.
And there are several of them as well here in the GTE AM class as well. We've talked about the GTE Pro class, but in the GTE AM class, a huge chunk of the field made up of Ferrari 488s. Of course, it's not what we're using at the moment, but definitely worth mentioning as we are here nevertheless. Giancarlo Fisichella, we talked about him. He is going to be out for Spirit of Race, as he usually is. Definitely those guys will be fighting for victory, but Car Guy Racing in the Ferrari, likewise Castle Racing, Clearwater Racing, WeatherTech Racing, MR Racing as well as another one of the Kessel Racing cars, JMW Motorsport, likewise. So huge amount of Ferraris in that GTE AM class. Wouldn't be surprised if a couple of them end up on the podium and maybe one of them on the top step as well. And their history in Le Mans, very, very rich, of course. They're the third most successful manufacturer in the history of Le Mans, but now their focus in the World Endurance Championship is on the GT class, and it has been for a number of years.
Yeah, it's always a fascinating category to be racing in. There's always a wide variety of manufacturers and cars taking part, so it's the one where you can really get one over on manufacturers by being the dominant car or being the best car out there. So it's always something they're striving to do, putting plenty of cars out there on the grid, because it pleases fans as well. You've got fans who flock to circuits to see their favourite cars, and lots of people like seeing Ferraris. Ferraris is one of them brands that people like watching. They like seeing their cars. There's something about them that's special. And whether it might be because of the history, as we mentioned, the pedigree they've got, the race winningness that they have sort of ingrained into the team, the manufacturer itself, it's just great to be able to still share that 50, 60 years on from when they were originally racing and dominating.
All you have to do is look around the grandstands here at Le Mans and you see the flags waving, the Ferrari flags, the t-shirts being worn as well. They have a huge amount of support here. And I know that there will be plenty of fans cheering them on in both the GT classes. Unfortunately, the Ford not being used, the 2016 Ford Racing GT. Ford, a great story for them. They were such a prominent force for overall victories in the 60s. In 2015, it would be announced that Ford would return to the 24-hour of Le Mans in 2016 with their new factory-supported Ford GT. The car we are using, running under the name the Ford Chip Ganassi Racing Team. Of course, it still runs under that name now. The car's competed in the FIA World Endurance Championship as well as the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship as well. And it couldn't have been a happier return for the American manufacturer. 50 years after their first overall victory against Ferrari, history had repeated itself with Ford once again beating the Italian outfit in a close run to the flag. And behind the wheel of the number 68 winning car that year was Joey Had, Dirk Muller and Sebastian Bourdais, of course a big name out in the States still to this day. Definitely was a fitting tribute, that result for the manufacturer, who also finished in third place as well. So two cars it was on the podium. And in that year, they were even successful in the World Endurance Championship as well, finishing second overall with victories at Fuji and Shanghai. So it's a shame after all of that we don't see them represented in this. But whoa, what's happened there? That's Williams facing the wrong way. Now that looks like, was that just caught out by the conditions, or was that inflicted by a bit of contact from another team? What did you see?
It looked like they just ran wide over the AstroTurf coming into sort of the Stavlos section of the circuit. They dipped the wheel on the AstroTurf, caught the grass wide, and just spun the car around, and that has now given the free position to Tyrrell. Now we heard their drivers and they love these conditions, and now they've got a free position to take with them. So great for them, and it's also worth keeping a note of the battle, which looks like it's raging on at the front once more between Veloce and Wildcats. That gap has come down to just over a second now, so any moment soon we can probably expect to see them hammer and tong like they were before, seeing if we've got the same repeat of itself in terms of the braking performance that we saw earlier and the ability to try and make those overtakes. But they've obviously adapted to the wet weather, so It's a case of they were very good in the dry, had certain driving conditions and abilities, but whether they can translate them to the wet weather is another thing to be seen. Obviously they struggled early on, and we saw them locking up and running wide many a time to get used to these conditions, but it looks like they found a groove now, got into a rhythm and started to try and close that gap down. So we'll have to see what comes of it for them.
Oh, well, that's a shame of tyre for Williams. Tyre will have now gone ahead, and tyre will, it is who are going to be in 6th place at the moment, so well, easy pickings for them.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a case of Williams are looking, and it's another one of these things where they've had another issue, another driver mistake, and we've seen plenty of them so far. And it's things that we keep saying every time they make one, it's like they need to stop doing that, they need to cut it out and get their heads down. They seem to do it, and then they make another mistake. It's disappointing for them. They'll be disappointed in themselves, but all they can do is get their heads down and just try and recover. But they seem to be struggling to get that mentality sorted within their team at this moment in time.
Well, we've been talking about some of the legendary cars of Le Mans, the legendary manufacturers of Le Mans who are featuring in this very race. But one legendary driver is Alan McNish, and let's find out a little bit more about him.
I think Le Mans is dangerous. Any motorsport is dangerous. Considering everything, it's actually, I think, quite safe. When I say that, the average speed is super high. It's as high as any Grand Prix, nearly. If you think you're doing about 17 Formula One Grand Prix back to back in one day with nearly 3 times the Formula One grid, so for traffic, then you bring all of those things together, it's not a surprise that there are incidents, there are mistakes, that things happen. But the reality is that we've been very fortunate over the last few decades that we haven't had so many serious. We have had some fatal crashes, but we've been fortunate there. However, the thing that I think is important is we don't just rest on history, we actually still continue to improve. And that's something that the ACO and the FIA and WEC have been pushing very hard to do.
Here from Alan McNish there, of course, a driver who has won this event in the past. Alan McNish became a little bit of a legend here at Le Mans, and now actually commentates for the FIA World Endurance Championship alongside Martin Haven. So still a big voice within the championship, Alan McNish.
Of course, he's one of those drivers that when he speaks about something to do with racing, you listen, because he's talking an awful lot of sense, and it's always information that's usable. Especially even for these guys, they can take experience that he's got and relays to us through these kind of videos that we see, and apply it to their own racing, because it matters, and he knows what he's talking about.
Yeah, Alan McNish, got to say the cars he got behind as well, some legendary cars, and proved his worth, didn't he, here at Le Mans, as well as he did in several other championships as well. But it does go to show that an event like this can really change a driver's career. You win Le Mans once, win it twice, maybe if you're lucky enough to even do it 3 times, you become a legend of the sport.
Of course, you start getting sort of affiliation with manufacturers as well, so you become not just a legend or a hero or anything like that in terms of general fans, but within manufacturers themselves, they see you as someone who pioneered and helped them create the success that they have. You think of Alan McNish and you look at the Audi partnership that they had. It's always a case of whenever you think of one, you think of the other. It goes hand in hand, so it's great to see.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about that partnership, it's still very true today, like you said. Alan McNish always very present within their garages wherever they are racing, and there's no doubt he would have been doing that throughout this year as well. But here we are with Williams, just coming through Blanchimont and up towards the chicane. That mistake we saw just before we heard from Alan. We saw, unfortunately, the Williams team going off onto the AstroTurf, and that saw them spin round. But since then, they have been able to just start recovering slightly. And another team that have been recovering perhaps more than slightly is the Wildcats team, because at one stage they were a few seconds back from Veloci after the rain had started to fall. But now they seem to be settling into these conditions, and it looks as if they are closing back in now on Veloce. The gap, which stood over 3 seconds at minimum at one stage, is now down to 1.1 seconds.
Yeah, we saw the Wildcats team sort of struggle to come to grips with the wet weather, but now time's passed, now they've got used to it lap after lap. They've obviously found a sweet spot with the driving and the car. It's allowed them to reel that gap back in, and Veloce are going to be under that same pressure that they were earlier in the race, and we'll see if they can resist it in the same way that they did before.
We've seen them go head-to-head a couple of times now, and it looks like we're about to see it again. Coming out of the final corner, Wildcats have made moves on the Veloce team already in this race, some more successful than others. And Wildcats now are going to have to take them on, albeit in very different conditions.
Absolutely, just looking from the onboards that we've got at the moment, it still looks like they've got that braking performance advantage that they had in the dry. And they say, no one in the seat of that Veloce car, he might have been driving within himself just to be safe, make sure he's got the car on track, but now he's coming under pressure. We're going to see if he's got anything left in the tank to try and eke out a little bit more performance, a little bit more lap time, to try and make his job a little bit easier instead of having to defend all the time.
Well, we're getting closer to definitely seeing this battle start off. You can see further down the field, Williams and Tyrrell still very close as well. These two main battles on circuit, the two closest battles, but the main one out of the two has to be our battle for the lead, of course, as we head down towards the hairpin. Veloce just ahead. We're approaching some traffic ahead of that, but hopefully that doesn't see either Veloce or Wildcats delayed. But, Veloce just coming up to the back marker now. We'll pull to the outside at Pouon and we'll get past with no such problem. Wildcats, the team that could be delayed by a fraction of a second, but I'd say in the end the back marker did a very good job there to give both the leaders enough space to make a move without much time lost. So gap is now under 1 second between Veloce and Wildcats. 57 laps will be completed. Next time we cross the line, we'll go on to lap number 58 of 78. So we are well into the second half of the race now, and the battle for the lead getting ever closer.
Absolutely, rain doesn't look like it's holding off anytime soon. It's just continuing to pour down. The track surface seems to remain stagnant, so these conditions are quite common for them at this point in the race. They're not having to learn anything new. It's just dialing the car in, dialing themselves in, trying to push the boundaries without going over them. So obviously if you go over them in the wet, the penalty is usually a bit more severe than if you do it in the dry. But here, a good example, look at that braking performance that they find and still get the car slowed down. They gain so much time under the brakes. It's just trying to get closer around other parts of the circuit to make sure that they can get within range to try and look at making a move if possible.
Well, down towards La Source we go then, and we have seen under braking here how close the Wildcats team can get, and I think that was demonstrated there once again. So Veloce are going to be looking in their mirrors, not for the first time in this race, seeing a Wildcats car getting bigger and bigger. Veloce and Wildcats proving just how competitive the Le Mans Esports Series, 58 laps, and yet we have nothing to choose, despite the fact we've gone through differing weather conditions as well. In cars that are very evenly matched, we can just see the results of drivers from around the world that have qualified to be here by being the quickest within the qualifying events and throughout the series as well. And this is the result. Fantastic racing all the way throughout. I don't think we've had a dull race so far. We haven't had a race without a huge amount of drama and action and fighting for the lead.
Absolutely, every race we've always had 2-car battles, 3-car battles, even 4-car battles in the modern prototypes at Silverstone earlier in the day, which is just crazy driving, but brilliant stuff from them. They're crazy in a good way, of course. It was great to see, and it was more important to some people that we've got this battle for the lead. It's not just 2 cars battling for position at any point in the race. This is for the lead of the race. The difference of between $3,000 and $2,000 on the line for these guys, so it means an awful lot to them. to try and get in front and keep it there, but 20 laps to go. That's a lot of time for this Veloci car to try and soak up the pressure, as they have done earlier in the race, it must be said, so they've got a bit of experience in that side of things, but different conditions, they're really up against it in terms of this Wildcats car that's behind them. But they're doing a good job at the moment. They can't get within range to try and launch an attack under braking, which is the main thing. They just need to try and give it consistency. Track limits becoming an issue ever more with these guys in terms of the conditions becoming difficult for them to. They're pushing the boundaries. They're trying to find that little bit extra time, and they're pushing the boundaries of the track boundaries themselves. And it'll be interesting to see if anything comes off that, if they start taking too many liberties with them.
Well, here we go, up towards the source. One more time. Now this, the 59th time of 78 laps, and it is getting closer and closer. This perhaps the closest we have been since the rain started to fall between Veloce and Wildcats up towards Eau Rouge, and the Wildcats team could be lining up a move within the end of the Kemmel Straight. Let's see if that happens. Fantastic runs through Eau Rouge. Wildcats pull alongside Veloci, and will this be a case of them breezing past, or are they going to go head-to-head under braking? I think it's going to be the latter. Let's see who comes out on top. Oh, Wildcats going to try that move around the outside at Lecombe that has been so popular. They're not able to in these conditions. It just seems to be that in the wet conditions, that move did not look possible at all. So Wildcats are going to have to wait for another day.
Absolutely, no, perfect squeeze by Noah on the entry to that corner to make sure that he made it clear that he was not going to be making that move around the outside. An interesting factor to take into account, you've got drivers here who jump in partway through the race. If they're listening to certain things during the part of the race and at the early stage when they're not in the car and they see overtaking manoeuvres being pulled off at certain parts of the track that are unexpected, they can take that knowledge with them into the cockpit and apply it themselves. So maybe Noah's seen a couple of the overtakes earlier in the race where cars have gone round the outside of that specific corner, and then he's found a way to implement it into his driving to make sure that he's not going to be overtaken in the same way.
Well, in towards the chicane we go, and it's going to go down to the final chicane, isn't it, here on this lap. Could certainly see a change there. Wildcats very good on the brakes as we get to that point, but Veloce now know that. They've seen how late Wildcats can brake, both with them diving, bombing down the inside, and also them trying very bold moves. But Wildcats now, this is the closest they have been. They are right on the toe, literally pushing the Veloci car now down towards Blanchimont. Are we going to see a challenge? Surely we will. Is it going to be down the inside, or will it have to be down the outside? Let's wait and see. It's going to be down the inside. Oh, from a country mile back, Wildcats came diving down the inside, but Veloci are the car that will come out in the lead. So Veloci holding on for the time being.
It's a clever bit of positioning by the Veloci car, Noah behind the wheel. So he's given the inside line there for the Wildcat car to overtake, but he knows that because it then swings left on the exit, he's going to have the inside flat part anyway. So even if the car gets up his inside, he's then on the outside for the final part, which is absolutely fine for him to be able to drive out and still retain the lead. And you look at the gap that he's now got from the failed overtaking attempt that happened at the bus stop chicane, and now going through Eau Rouge and Radion, he's got enough of a gap to make sure he doesn't even need to worry about the next braking zone, which is nice for him.
Yeah, it means he can almost relax a little bit for the time being. Well, relatively relax compared to what we've seen over the last few laps. Baguette Racing are still there in third place. We've got Veloci almost delayed there by one of our back markers, which was Keep It Simple. So Keep It Simple did a very good job just sticking on the inside of the curb, which allowed Veloci to take a racing line rather than having to go off racing line. I think it almost caught Veloci out though. Yeah,
the Keep It Simple car sort of between a rock and a hard place. They went way too deep into the chicane, but there's a barrier across the track and across the exit which you can't go through, so they had to really slow it down, pull it back to the circuit to try and get around that, but also not impact the leaders trying to pass them as well. So they managed it just about right. It wasn't ideal for Veloci, but they managed to get through it unscathed and haven't lost too much time from it, thankfully.
Well, they still hold on to the lead at the moment, but there's plenty of time to go. And a great race we are watching here between Veloci and Wildcats. This is the battle for the lead. This is race number 6 of 9 in the LeMans Esports Series Super Final, the inaugural LeMans Esports Series Super Final. Well, the team's battling for a $100,000 prize pool when we get to the last race, where the grid will be set by the points that are scored throughout races 1 to 8. We'll be battling it out for $25,000. That'll be the prize for first place, with prizes going all the way down to 6th place. However, there is a twist. If you the grid with the Le Mans start doesn't see all the drivers running to their rigs at the same time. Every point that you are back from the car ahead of you means you have to go to your rig a second later. So it does throw a big twist into that race, but we will be back in these cars. And this is just demonstrating that if Veloce or Wildcats are anywhere near the front for that race, that they have a very, very good chance to go after that 25,000 and also get on that Le Mans podium as well. As the grid will be forming up, the drivers will be going on to the podium, the top 3 of the Le Mans Esports Super Final. But even here, the winner of this race, $3,000 to them, $2,000 for Wildcats if they take second, and $1,000 for Baguette Racing if they take third. So lots to play for on all occasions in the Le Mans Esports Series. It is very much a unique event, and it's throwing up some pretty good racing. Wildcats seem to just change their approach on that lap. They seem to start pushing Veloce along for the very first time.
Yeah, it was a bit of smart driving, to be honest, from the Wildcats team. They got the run out on the source. The Veloce team got caught on the AstroTurf. They lost a bit of acceleration and traction from that, so they lost momentum. Wildcats had the run, but rather than risking a crazy 2-wide move into Eau Rouge, that was always going to end in disaster, let's be honest. It's a case of they didn't go for it, so we've got a car recovering back onto the circuit after presumably losing it through Blanchimont. That's the Williams Esports team. Again, making another mistake. They're into the pit lane here. I don't know if that's a result of the crash or if it's a scheduled pit stop, but either way, they're in the pits, and that's another load of time that they're going to be dropping. But another mistake that they've made. Unless there was contact, of course. There could have always been contact. It doesn't have to be a mistake for them. We didn't get to see exactly what happened, but only the recovering car.
Well, being told perhaps it's a potential contact that Williams had, so I think we're just hearing now that confirmation that Williams made contact with Tirewall Racing, and that unfortunately has led to both Williams and Tirewall losing time, and Tirewall into the pits after Williams has already made their trip down pit lane. They're now coming back out of pit lane already, so Williams rejoin, but a little bit of a shame for them, particularly after 60 laps, or 61 laps even, to go and do that of 78. That is a disappointment.
Of course, it's always one of them difficult situations where they're that long into a race now. It's a shame for it to go wrong for them, but they're also at a point where they're still racing. You can't just not go for a move because it's late on in an endurance race. So you can't blame them for going for it. It's a shame they've come to blows, because they have been racing closely throughout the entirety of the race. They're swapping positions back and forth, but unfortunately on this occasion it didn't quite work out for either of them.
Well, down the Camel Straight we go, and it didn't work out for either of those guys, but this race is working out for both of these guys. It is Veloce versus Wildcats, and Wildcats once again just filling the mirrors of the Veloce car there. Is there an approach change here? Is Wildcats playing the long game now and waiting for later in the race, I wonder, or are we going to see a change of lead made in the next few laps? All will be revealed. And thank you for being with us wherever you are watching from, however you are watching. Do get in touch with us via at Le Mans Esports and let us know how you are enjoying the racing so far. Why don't you get in touch and tell us who you think's going to win this one? Let's get that going. Veloce or Wildcats? Who do you think? Get in touch at Le Mans Esports. Or do you think that something may happen between these two teams which will lead to Baguette Racing potentially going to take the win? Send us your thoughts ahead of the end of the race, and let's see who is right. Let's see which team goes on to take race victory. At the moment we're on board with Veloce looking back at Wildcats Racing, and Wildcats Racing getting closer all the time, but Veloce, every time Wildcats get closer, they're just able to pull away slightly. So This is a very good drive. When you're in the race lead, this is pretty much what you have to do. Anytime the gap closes, you have to open it again straight away.
Of course, although we're looking back at that Wildcats car, and I don't think it's within braking distance to be able to get one up the inside. No. It's not, but we get a good view of the front of that BMW. No, it always seems to be in that position behind this Veloce car, there or thereabouts, and they just can't quite get that gap down enough to be able to make an overtake maneuver. But they're keeping the pressure on, hoping that if they can't make the mistake happen, they can benefit other ways from that. But they can't do much more at this point. They're driving to the best of their ability. They're on the tail of Veloce the whole time. It's not therefore the Veloce cars aren't making a mistake. They're driving superbly well. No, they're not necessarily having to defend anything, but the pressure on them at the moment to not make a mistake is incredibly high, and they're driving incredibly well to make sure they're not making any mistakes to allow the Wildcats team to have an opportunity to overtake. In saying that, though, they've got a tremendous run up through Eau Rouge, and we'll have to look to see. They seem to be struggling on straight line speed. You can see it there. They've got a great run, but they don't seem to be able to gain anything in the last half of a straight. So that braking performance is almost wasted because they can't get the final bit of slipstream they need to get within attacking range.
So how do they change this then? Of course, this is what racing in general is all about. If you're fighting for the lead and you're trying one tactic, that's not working, you've got to find a new one. What could Wildcats do here? Because, as you said, when they get to the end of the straights, they seem to just run out of time. Are they going to have to think about doing something now in the infield, in the corners we are on now, the likes of Pouon perhaps? Well, it looks like they might even try that now. I think my own question is going to be answered by Wildcats, who dive to the outside. Are they going to go all the way around the outside is the question. The answer is they're going to give it a go at least. And Wildcats take the lead from Veloce there. Well, fantastic move round the outside of Pouon, just as we were talking about Wildcats needing to go at a corner that perhaps Veloce wouldn't be expecting. That's exactly what they did. Fantastic move.
Absolutely, it's beautiful precision driving from the pair of them. Veloce very fair, not crowding them off the circuit, and just the precision driving for both of them to steam into that corner full speed in the wet, get the braking point nailed, and leave each other enough room to be able to get through there side by side. Perfect driving.
How hard is it to make that move at Pouon?
Oh, very. I would have crashed.
Well, I knew that, but yeah, well, Wildcats into the lead. I've got to say it was good to see that time with Veloce and Wildcats that we didn't see anyone off circuit. That time, clean racing, as you mentioned, from both teams.
Absolutely, and it's interesting to see if Wildcats can now try and make a break for it, or if they're going to go in the pits. That's how they're going to make a break for it. They're going to go into the pit lane.
You sounded almost disappointed.
Well, they've made the overtake move, and they go in the pit lane. You don't even get a lap to lead.
Oh well, it was good while it lasted, I guess. But Wildcats into pit lane then. So Veloce return to the front. At least they had a little bit of time to have the tarmac to themselves ahead. But Veloce it is then who go back into the lead. Wildcats in the pits at the moment. So well, we assume then that means Veloce are going to be in for a pit stop very shortly, and that would close things up once again. We'll find out over the next 14 laps, but that was a sign that Wildcats, even in these conditions, can take the win. I say even. In the dry, they proved that. That's the first time, really, I think, that they proved in the wet conditions that they can get the better of Veloce.
Absolutely, it'd be interesting to find out now if they had to do that because of car limitations, fuel was maybe running too low,
right.
They couldn't get another lap out of it, or if it was a tactical decision. I don't see what would be tactical to get the race lead and then pit and give it up instantly. So it must have just been a car thing with the fuel. But now they're basically racing against each other still, but just on different parts of the track. Essentially like a time trial between the two of them, where they've not got the pressure of seeing the other car around them, but they've still got to drive as fast as possible so that when the Veloce car pits, they can come out in front.
There you can see all the graphic to the right of your screen there shows you the all the ratings, different ratings in the game for the BMW. So did show you who did the livery of the car as well, which looks very nice. I've got to say that is also a big thing in esports, isn't it? Getting people to design the liveries because they look fantastic. So I mean, Veloce's looking very smart there. So always good to see that we get those names mentioned. But as you said, now we've got a race going on between Veloce and Wildcats, despite the fact that they are split by 30 seconds.
Exactly, and it's now one of them things where the pressure's still on the drivers. They can't see each other on track, but they know that battle's still raging on despite that fact. So it'll be interesting to see if or when Veloce are going to pit, whether they react, whether they have to react due to fuel limitations, we'll see now whether they dive into the pits or not.
Yes, straight in. Well, this was it. This is basically saying, Wildcats showed their hand. What Veloce have just replied straight away. They don't want to give Wildcats time to try and close that gap. They want to limit the amount of time that Wildcats have to do that by diving straight into the pits.
Yeah, well, we saw it earlier in the modern prototypes. The last pit stop of the race, we had one team pit a lap before the other, and it worked with an undercut. They managed to get through and gain position. So it's interesting to see if the same rules will apply for this category of car as well, and this track combinations. Veloce now looking to exit the pit lanes. The Wildcat team's going to be coming into turn one. It's going to be a run down through Eau Rouge, but I think the Veloce team are going to have it covered by the looks of things.
Let's have a look. Yes. Wow, that's quite a big gap.
Yeah,
actually
worked completely opposite to how it did in one of the earlier categories. So again, it's one of them things where it was worth a try, and they had to do it. But it's also a case of I don't think we saw it on stream, but it's a case of that. It's a case of there may have been an incident or an accident where they've lost time on an out lap, or maybe even in the pit lane itself. In laps and out laps can make a big difference. Getting in the pit lane, getting out the pit lane is a big thing, and obviously we've seen earlier in this race people making mistakes trying to get into the pit lane. I think it was the tyre wall and the Williams battle that we saw earlier, where there was a car buried in the pit wall because it failed to get in. It's a very tight pit entry. It surprises you when you try and get in there how easy it is to crash, and maybe that was a part of a hindrance for the Wildcats team. So they got the lead, and they now got to work hard to get it sorted all over again.
Yeah, well, we are getting confirmation that is what happened. Wildcats unfortunately did make contact with the wall as they went into the pit, so a big mistake from them. Means they've got it all to do in terms of closing down the lead, and not for the first time. They've been in this position now a number of times. They've given themselves a lot of hard work to do in this race, Wildcats, and they've put in a very good shift to be able to get back into the lead every single time. Say get back into the lead, albeit briefly on the last occasion. But Wildcats, 5 seconds, over 5 seconds is that? Seems, I hate to put a dampener on anyone sitting here hoping for a lead battle, but it just seems a little bit too much for me, that.
It is, but obviously this is the point where the pressure ramps up even further with Veloce. They've got potentially $3,000 that's going to be coming their way if they can hold on, but they know they've got a fast car behind them that's probably going to be looking to close that gap once again. It's down to nerves at this point, who's going to crack under pressure and who isn't, but that gap now up to 6 seconds. Veloce seems to have it under control at the time being.
Well, it's looking like a very good day for the BMWs. Of course, they're going to take the top positions here. It's just in what order will they? Now, Wildcats, seems like they've dropped even further, so further mistakes being made by Wildcats. They are falling further behind. Back to Veloce. And just one mistake like that going into the pit lane, it's amazing how that can just change the complexity of a race.
Absolutely, they're fighting for tenths of a second every lap, but one incident in the pit lane can cost you multiple seconds, and it makes the whole stint almost not pointless, but you undo all of your hard work. You spent maybe half an hour, 45 minutes driving your heart out to try and close a gap, and then you throw it all away with one tiny incident in the pit lane. It's disheartening for them, and I'm hoping that's not going to put them down too much to the point of they've not got enough fight left in them to take the battle to Veloce. I'm sure that's not the case, but we'll have to see how it unfolds over the next dozen laps or so.
Yeah, well, we're just looking back here at Mighty 38, and just a huge shout out to them all the time. I think Mighty 38, a team that are going with two drivers doing a 24-hour event between them. Of course, it was supposed to be 3 drivers. Unfortunately, one of their drivers not able to be with us this weekend. So that meant they were down to 2. The rules in terms of minimum and maximum driving times were adjusted to suit them. And Mighty 38, well, it was pretty simple. I think when they were coming up with their tactics, they probably got a piece of paper and one line said half each, and then it was pretty much draw a line under it. I doubt it took them too long to figure something out there. That said, I guess the only thing for Mighty 38 going with the 2 drivers is who's going to do the longest stint in each race.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure they've probably got their specialist categories or their favourite categories they can look into, but we know that coming into this series, the other driver who isn't here, unfortunately, they had a role to play in terms of categories of car they're driving, so the other two that are here didn't need to worry about them because they were already taken care of. They got to the event, circumstances came on which meant that they were going to have to basically take part in races they've not practiced for and not had time to prepare for, so that's a massive challenge for them, on top of the fact that there's only 2 of them racing, and they're going to be, you have to say, mentally and physically more drained than the other guys here because they've had to work for a longer period of time, essentially.
Yeah, well, they can't sleep because, I know some teams are going to do that anyway. Don't think, how long has it been since you slept as well?
I can't remember. But the thing is, for them, is like they potentially have the option in a longer race like this. One of the drivers could do 2.5 hours, and in that last pit stop, they can swap driving, of course. But it's a thing of we've had it reported that people are trying to sleep here, they get a couple of hours and they feel worse for it because 2 hours just isn't enough time to recover. And so you're almost better just staying awake, stay focused on what's going on, and try and keep your adrenaline levels up. You focus on the screen and what's happening with the race, and it helps you stay awake and doesn't let you drain as much as what otherwise you could suffer from.
But it's almost, of course, it's the other thing as well. You need at least someone there in your team to give you instructions if needed, also to chat with race control if needed as well, because if you're being given a 10-second penalty and you have no idea why, that's when it's your teammates' job to go and discuss with either another team that there's been an incident or race control and figure out a solution to any problems that come up. So
they'll need to wake you up as well if you fall asleep at the wheel.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we'll just foot to the accelerator and straight into a wall, and you would, you wouldn't know anything about it because you'd be tucked up somewhere. But the other thing that team told me is that they hadn't even practiced in some of the cars that they were about to go out in because that was, the role of the third driver who is not here. So they were at a huge disadvantage right from the off, and I think they've dealt with it very well.
Yeah, I think they are full underdog in terms of their preparation coming into it isn't ideal. They're in a position where pretty much everything is against them. Everything that makes a big difference in Endurance Championship, they're suffering with one less player, and that impacts them in so many ways other than just the racing. As on the screen here, we've got the Williams car, I believe that is. It's a CMP car that's been passed.
Mighty 38.
Mighty 38 cars, the team that we're literally talking about, have now made a move, so that's going to wake them up, that's for sure.
Yeah, well, let's hope there's no falling asleep at the wheel now they've made that move. But Mighty 38 it is then, who go up a position past CMP, and it was a move that was set up through Eau Rouge, and it just made it very simple to go into that position. So Mighty 38 up another position with just 10 laps now remaining here at race number 6 around Spa in the Modern GTEs. This race number 6 of 9 now of the LeMans Esports Series Super Final. We're getting further into the end of the event, but still a fair way to go. Mighty 38 then, there they are on screen. Behind them are CNP. Going up towards the chicane now. This is a battle I think that could take us all the way to the end perhaps, because CNP are not throwing in the towel. They're staying right with Mighty 38 at the moment. I'm just trying to identify the car ahead and whether that is a car that is going to be dropping a lap. Well, Kitty Crew are 50 seconds back from our race leader, and well, Mighty 38 are 139. So answer to that question is that is a car we're going to be lapping.
Perfect. We're all informed perfectly now. It's interesting though, because if this is the closest battle on track, because the battle that we had for the lead for so long looks so subsided. They've 10 seconds now, the gap. That seems to be game over as far as I'm concerned. They might have called it a day to say, we've got some money in the bank if we finish first and second in their respective teams. We'll take that. And the best thing that they've got from this is not just the fact they're winning money in this race, but the knowledge they've got that they're going to be good in the final race where there's more money available. Yeah. That's going to really lift their confidence and lift their spirits to say, we're in a good position here.
Yeah, and for teams that are actually up the field in the championship, going well in this race, including the likes of Veloci, this is hugely encouraging for them, isn't it? This is as you said pre-race, this could be a critical race within this Le Mans Esports series because this is the first time we're seeing them in the GTEs. This is the cars we're going to be using later. This is the first time we're going to get a real idea of exactly who is where in terms of when it comes to race. Of course, that last race will be at Le Mans. It will only be an hour and a half, but I don't think there's going to be a huge amount of differences there between what we're seeing here, potentially what we're going to see there.
No, they're letting down the marker to say, no, in these cars where the most money is going to be available, we're going to be the teams to beat, so come and get us. So, and obviously, you're going to have differences in terms of when they start and what the gaps are going to be, and obviously it's going to be crucial over these next few races to try and work out, as we head into the final race, what the starting order is going to be and what the gaps are between them. Because obviously we now know that these guys are the ones to watch in this class, but where are they going to be starting in the race itself, and whether they can make the most of their speed that they have.
Yes, indeed. There you can see the arena. How quiet does that look now in comparison to when we got this race underway, and it was packed full of fans. The fans are back home asleep and getting ready for a big day tomorrow, but the show here certainly goes on all the way through the night, and it will do all the way through to 11 a.m. tomorrow. Get back to work.
You talking to me?
Yeah. Oh God. Coffee, flashing coffee off.
Everyone's walking past with like coffees and like, yeah, thanks.
Thanks, where's mine? Well, I guess we got to continue going because we can't just stand there and wander off. But well, back to the racing. I think more important things at hand. This battle.
The racing has worked better than any kind of coffee in terms of keeping us awake. The racing this race, it's been a long race. We're nearly 3 hours into it, and we've had battles for the lead. For the majority of it, and we've had but that first lap that we had, there was just utter carnage for most of it. And they've all sorted themselves out, and we ended up with a great battle for the lead, which unfortunately now subsided, but we've still got battles going on the track. Mighty 38 haven't pulled away all that much from CNP, so there's still battles going on as we head towards the climax of this race. But it's still a reasonably long time to go. 10 laps, that's a long time for these guys to still try and manage these conditions. You see, they're still struggling to get over Radion itself, and the rain's still falling just about, so I don't think we're going to get any changing conditions between now and the end of the race. So I'm not going to say plain sailing for them, but
yeah, well, rain's starting to fall once again. Brings me on to my next point. Of course, first time we saw the rain. Have you been surprised by how the rain has affected the race, or hasn't affected the race a huge amount?
What, that it made the track wet? No, it has. It's made a big difference. Though the track, it's got more slippery for them. Of course, we've seen the lap times drop maybe 10 seconds a lap slower than what they were in the dry, and we saw how difficult it was for them to adjust to it, and they're still struggling, some of them. So yeah, it's a case of we saw what they were like in the dry conditions. They got stabilised with it, but this just thrown a curveball into the mix, and I think it's made for a great race.
Good stuff. I like the fact you quickly moved on to an appropriate answer rather than the smart one that came up.
My time's coming to an end on the stream. I need to make the most of it.
Well, you've got another 8 laps now to do so it's running out pretty quickly. But back to CMP we go. Mighty 38, of course, ahead of us, and laps are running out for both Harry and CMP here to try and make more of an impact on this race. Sorry. Let's go through the field for you. Veloce leading the way from Wildcats. Forget Racing third at the moment. We are on board, as you can see, highlighted in blue with CMP Racing coming up towards the chicane. But we'll go back to the leaders. 4th place is Kitty Crew, and then in 5th place is Mighty 38 ahead of us, CMP, Williams behind us. And then we have Tyre Wall, SMP Racing, and we have Simple, MAD and Admo Cartus are at the back of the field at the moment. Well, on board we are with CMP here, chasing Mighty 38 in the wet conditions. Very tough, of course, but drivers are handling it very well. Rain's starting to fall once again, so their task is going to become a little bit more difficult as well now, Harry. it's going to have to be, well, they're going to be challenged to adapt to the conditions once again, because they would have got into a nice rhythm there. They would have marked out all their new braking points perhaps, and new apex points, but now they may have to start changing those again with more rain falling.
Absolutely, it's the last thing they would have wanted this late in the race. They would have just wanted a nice consistent track to drive on to bring it home, but they're not going to get that. So yeah, they're going to have to go through that whole learning process again of finding out where the braking point is changed to now that the rain is starting to fall again. You know, it can work either way though. They can benefit from other people's mistakes in trying to adapt to the conditions, but they need to be careful they don't fall off the circuit themselves. And going off wide with the AstroTurf like that is not what you want to be doing, because it's extremely dangerous and wet out there.
Well, we saw Williams take a turn round the wrong way because of that. That was further round the lap, but Williams did fortunately have a spin going onto the AstroTurf. It is deadly in these conditions. It's certainly not advised at any time, but CMP have used up a couple of their lives by going onto that AstroTurf already. As we're on this onboard, Ari, so we got to this point last time where we stopped your onboard, so why don't you talk us through to the rest of the lap?
Yeah, so there's a nasty puddle on the inside of that exit curve of Stavlo, which they seem to be running through that too many troubles, but they need to be careful because that can catch them out. Obviously the exit of that one as well, they seem to be taking a few liberties with track limits, but just about within limits, I think. And then going through Bonchimon, difficult corner in the dry, let alone the wet. So it's a case from, going into the bus stop chicane now is a hard braking zone, always difficult. It's uphill for this section. Watch the curves, they can be slippery. Again, AstroTurf on the exit, you've got to try and stay away from that, and then you can drive to the line to start a fresh new lap as you head into La Source.
Well, getting towards the end of this race number 6 then, and on board with CMP, we are, of course, they're chasing down mighty 38. That could be a battle that may develop, but before we come back to that, we'll give your ears a rest from the voices of us two. We'll hear from someone a little bit more well-known in Alan McNish before we go and look at the danger of Le Mans.
The first time I drove at night in a racing car was in Spa, doing an endurance test in 1997. And I finished about 8:30 at night on my first stint, and I drove back to the hotel for a little bit of rest, and I came back about 1 o'clock in the morning, came into the tunnel and up to La Source hairpin, and I watched Hans Stuck coming out of the hairpin down towards Eau Rouge, through Eau Rouge and up to Les Combes, and it looked like he was doing 500 kilometers per hour. I just saw this tunnel of light. Now, I'm not getting in that. No way am I getting in that. And then you come here to Le Mans, and it feels like you're doing 600 kilometers per hour. This speed, because you've only suddenly got a very, very narrow view of the lights going forward. You don't see what's in the periphery. You don't see above you. You just see what your lights can show you. And you do get this sensation of absolute speed. You have to be, as a driver, on the same limit in the daylight and in the dark. And so you have to make sure that you brake at the same point, you carry the same speed into the corners, and you attack in the same way. You tend to have a little bit of softer tyre, and it's a bit cooler, so there's more oxygen going into the engine, so it breathes a little bit better and a bit more power. But in reality, the lap times can often be quicker in the middle of the night. But you've got to eat your carrots. You've got to be able to see, that's for sure as well. But it is a skill. Some have got it, some don't. You look at Tom Christensen and he's got 9 wins and you think, crikey, that's greedy. Share them out. But Tom deserves it, every single one of them, because he's got a different type of skill. He's got an adaptability. He's got a real feel for a car, not when it's at its peak, but when it's probably at its worst. And in Le Mans, the car goes through a lot of different stages. The track goes through different stages. The race does as well. And you've got to be adaptable. And that's where I think Tom was at his best, was when the car was at his worst. And then he was able to bring things out with it. And Tommy Boy is Le Mans. He is Mr. Le Mans, and he totally deserves to be Mr. Le Mans. And I was actually very pleased when we became teammates, because I knew it'd be easier fighting with him than against him, because he was tough to fight against, I can tell you. But it didn't actually bring the successes we both thought it would do. However, we did win 2 Le Mans together, and I'm proud that I was part of that.
Fantastic to hear words there from Le Mans legend and motorsport legend in general, Alan McNish. Still a big name today. As we mentioned before, now commentates on the FIA World Endurance Championship with Martin Haven on the official channels. And great to still have Alan around the paddock, albeit in a different way. Of course, you mentioned how his ties in with manufacturers due to his results. And that is something that is very prominent at Le Mans. If you can get some good results for a manufacturer, you're going to do very well for yourself for many, many years. But we are approaching the end of race number 6 then, and we're going to stay with this battle between CMP and just ahead of us, closing in, we have Mighty 38. So 5th place, this good points in the bag if you can go and get 5th place. Better than 6th place, of course, by 1 point, if you can believe it or not. But CMP, every point counts, so they'll want to get that 5th place away from Mighty 38. Speaking of points, we might as well run through. It is a very simple point system. 12 points go to our winner, and they work their way down until we get to 12th place, and they pick up the 1 point. And the points have been racking up. We'll go through the points as they stand at the start of the next race before we go racing in race number 7 of the event, and look at who is where, getting towards the end of the event. But now we are on board with CMP. Ahead of us is Mighty 38. Your order is still Veloce in the race lead here at Spa. They've done a fantastic job. They've had pressure at times, but they've dealt with it very, very well. They lead Wildcats and Baguette Racing in 3rd place. And while this battle is still developing, we're going to head down to the floor and over to Bryn.
Now, is it just me, or is it getting cold in here? It's getting cold, isn't it? Now, cold is maybe quite useful to keep you awake. You know, when you're driving along, it's sometimes good to wind the windows down. You don't often get that in a racing car. You don't have that luxury. But it is getting a bit cooler in here. And looking at Mighty 38, they have had one heck of a... I don't know how many hours we've been going for now. What, almost 14 hours? What they had was a strategy with 2 drivers to try and divide the time between the 2. And their method of doing this was kind of straight down the middle. So without Sean here, Chris and David have done a brilliant job. Chris was in there for around 8 hours without any other breaks at all. 8-9 hours. David is in there right now, and he has got to drive for the rest of the races, apart from the final race where they're going to divide it up into 2, because of course they have to adhere to the rules that they've been given based on a 2-driver lineup. So at the moment, they're really, really struggling. Going very quick, but of course really struggling because trying as hard as he can to stay focused. I bet he cannot wait for that checkered flag in 5 laps time so he can actually stop, stretch his legs before getting back in again to do a 2-hour race. And looking around, we've got some of the teams now starting to return to find out how their teammates have been getting on as well. And a few of these areas around in the pits, Wildcats area, for example, SMP Motorsport is beginning to resemble a 14-year-old's bedroom, with trainers thrown all over the floor, pillows and things as well. I don't blame them, not holding it against them or anything like that, but it's amazing to see at the moment. It's just, they cannot seem to focus on more than one thing at the moment, and at 3:10 in the morning, it's no surprise at all. But the arena isn't actually that full of people because it is 3:10 here in Le Mans. But we have drivers, competitors, we have their teammates as well, and people starting to come back into the arena to check on the progress and maybe to take over for the next race, which is due to start in 25 minutes, and we've still got 5 laps of this race to go.
Well, thank you very much, Bryn. Just interrupted me there while I was enjoying a little espresso. So, Harry, I'm just going to go straight to you.
Yeah. So it's a case of we've got like lap 75 or 78, so we really are coming to the end of this 3-hour race. The teams and drivers are going to be struggling at this point, not because of the race itself necessarily, but just because of the time it is, as Bryn alluded to. We've gone 3 a.m. now. These guys been racing since 11 a.m. between their teams, up before that point anyway to make sure they were ready, so they're really going to be starting to feel the effects. This weather is not helping them in terms of just their want and will to get to the end of this race in one piece. But still a battle raging on. These guys are going to be frustrated, especially the CMP drivers. They've got nearly 3 hours of racing and the car in front of them is there. That's an extra World Championship point, and they're just going to do everything they can to try and close that gap down to be able to make a move, but it's so tantalising, it's so far away for them.
Yeah, well, they've just having a look. Are they under pressure themselves now from Williams? So I'm just looking at the gap, and it looks as if Williams were closing in, unless my eyes are deceiving me. Yes, there they are. So two-way battle becomes a three-way battle now. Don't know if Williams have actually just been sitting in the distance the whole time, but certainly that gap has come down now, and it's going to be 3 cars battling it out to the end. So this just makes things even more makes it even more important. Now this could be a bit of a difficult situation for CMP here, because their focus may just switch slightly and may not be something that they're aware they're even doing, but they might start switching their attention to the car behind rather than the car ahead. Is that easily done as a driver?
It's not particularly, because their main focus for the last few laps has been trying to get that gap down to that car in front, and then by failing to do that as much as they would like, they're now going to have to go into defensive mode and defend from the car behind. It's difficult to get your mind set to switch like that and go from, I want to attack this car in front, I'm going to get that position, to I need to defend and hold on to my current position. So it's ebbing and flowing, it always is. These guys are gaining half a second, but it looks like there's no Williams in that picture that we can see. It was right there at the start of the lap. You can see it's nowhere to be seen, so they must have made a mistake maybe through the Eau Rouge section. So they're now coming through the end of the Kemmel Straight with a little bit of damage to their car by the looks of things, so they must have had an off somewhere. Obviously, these weather conditions still playing havoc with them even after all this time.
Yeah, so clearly something going on there. That's a real shame that for Williams. They were just starting to make that fight even more interesting, if it wasn't so already, and all of a sudden they now have a lot of work to do, and in fact that will probably be a race done for them in terms of making any more positions, unless anything serious is to go off between the likes of Mighty 38 and CMP, and we are running out of laps for anything more to change. Lap number 76 of 78 is what we are on now. So still 3 laps to go for our race leader, but CMP, time is running out here for them to catch Mighty 38 as they now head up towards Blanchimont. They're in a bit of a difficult situation here, aren't they, Harry, because they're just within that frustrating distance where they're not close enough to be applying serious pressure, but they are close enough to be able to see the car ahead and know that they have at least a small chance of taking a place.
Yeah, it's tantalising for them. It's a case of that car up ahead is an extra World Championship point, a second less that they have to wait in the final race if they can get there. They've been in this position for a whole host of laps towards the end of this race, but they just can't find that extra bit of speed to close the gap down, which is a shame for them. But hats off to Mighty 38. The two of them there, doing themselves proud to be able to hold on to a position under this kind of difficult circumstance they find themselves in.
And it was interesting to hear how they've actually been changing their tactics because they only have 2 drivers, that they've been keeping a driver in for huge lengths of time, kind of splitting this event in half almost before they get to the end, before they get to the 9th and final race.
Yeah, it's one way of doing the tactics. Obviously, other teams might be looking to spread it more evenly. Obviously, they don't really have the option, but obviously, rather than splitting evenly between the 2 of them, as you say, they're just sort of putting a load of the driving into one driver at a time. it's probably the best way to do it, to be fair, in their situation, because that driver just becomes tuned into the car, tuned into the driving, and they don't have to keep refreshing themselves by hopping out and hopping in, and they just get a consistency feeling, which ultimately, when the drivers are as good as they are, that's all they really want. They just want to give them seat time and they'll drive a good race.
But I guess it's a case of, when you do get into a rig, a few hours can just absolutely fly by, can't they? You look at the clock and or look out the window and all of a sudden it's pitch black outside. It's something that is easily doable.
Absolutely. Well, you find that it's 3 a.m. apparently.
Yeah, well, when did that happen? But there is CNP. We've talking about the challenges now they have to go on and get a further position. We are on the penultimate lap for the race leader now. CNP haven't started that penultimate lap just yet. They will do so when they cross the line next time. Veloce, it is our leaders. 14 seconds back is Wildcats. A further 6 back is Baguette Racing. So no real urgent battles are going to be had between the leaders, at least if it stays like it is, with no serious mistakes made. We should see Veloce, Wildcats and Baguette Racing cruise home into a first, second and third spot, taking the money along with it. But there is a slight chance we could see a change further down the field for 5th place, and that is the CNP versus Mighty 38 battle. Williams have dropped away from this, unfortunately, after their mistake. But only about a lap and a half to go now for Veloce. In fact, a lap and a few corners, because they're just coming up towards Blanchimont and will then make their way down towards the chicane. And it's been a superb performance from the Veloce team. They've at times been in a battle for the lead and intense fights for the lead, but they've sustained any pressure they've come across. Any time they've lost the lead, which has been on 2 occasions, they have got it straight back again. So Veloce have done a fantastic job all round.
Absolutely. We've seen races in this series already where people have led from start to finish and sort of walked off into the distance and not had to sort of fight for it. Still driven very well to get their wins, but this one they've had changeable conditions to deal with, and they've had battling from behind, big pressure from behind. They've had a car overtaking them and getting a penalty for it. It's one of those situations where they've had a whole host of things thrown at them, but they've stayed strong. Noah still at the wheel, as he was earlier. Defensive driving in the wet has been an absolute masterclass from him, and it's a well-earned victory for the team as a whole.
And when Noah did get in the car, he was thrown into a real pressure situation where he had the Wildcats car within a second, and immediately he was put under pressure to build a gap, sustain it. He wasn't quite able to sustain a gap considering the raw pace of the Wildcats car, but what he was able to do was not make any severe mistakes under that pressure, and every time Wildcats made their move and got through, Veloce had got back into the lead. So Veloce in a very deserved lead. It is a shame that we saw that instant for Wildcats, which saw them unfortunately making contact going into the pit lane in their final stop. It was that exact moment that has meant that when Veloce rejoined the circuit, they were in a comfortable lead, and for Veloce that was a perfect scenario and meant that they were able to focus on themselves all the way to the flag.
Absolutely. It's a case of, I can see the team here, they've got smiles on their faces. They know that this is basically $3,000 they've got in the bank for them, and it's been a well-earned $3,000 as well, so hats off to them.
Yep, Veloce, whether it's been dry, whether it's been wet, they've been at the front of the field. Big credit to the Wildcats team, though. They've driven superbly in this race as well, and will take a very deserved second place, and shown that they can fight for the win if they're in a good enough position to do so come the 9th and final race, when we go back into these modern GTE cars. Baguette Racing, a solid 3rd place for them as well. They have always been there or thereabouts, and definitely will be when we get to that final race. But our race winners are coming out of the final corner now, and it's going to be Veloce who come across the line and take the race win here at Spa. After 3 hours, Veloce lead us across the line, and a deserved round of applause as they do so as well. 2nd place, while they put up a brilliant fight, they put on a good show for us, and Wildcats take 2nd place, a very good result for them. very good points and a couple of $1,000 in their pockets as well. Fantastic stuff there from the Wildcats team. A brilliant race overall. Veloce, of course, Wildcats, the two main protagonists in that fight. But as you said, one of the most important things from this race was about the later race, the 9th and final race, which we'll see them back in these cars. Of course, we'll be on a different circuit, but we have just seen two teams perhaps that could be fighting for victory when we get there, should they be in a good grid position.
Well, absolutely, that's what they'll be hoping for. They've had this race, they've seen what they've got underneath them in terms of their car and their ability, so they'll be really upset that, if they're in the final race they're not in those kind of positions. Why aren't they? They've done the hard work in this race. The same thing can happen in the final race. That's what they'll be hoping for. But obviously the other teams will be hoping they can make a better improvement on themselves when more money is available to them.
Yeah, well, it was a fantastic race, brilliant stuff between Veloce and Wildcats, and it's brought us to the end of 3 hours, a very good race. And I think the end for you in the Le Mans Esports Series, your commentary roles. So, got to say, Harry, on behalf of everyone, a big thank you for all the great work that you've put in. A very long shift, but Harry took us all the way into this evening. So, thank you for that. But let's go now down to Bryn, who is down on the floor to get some reaction.
The reaction is, what, he's leaving, we've got 6.5 hours to go. How dare he? Well done there, Harry. Let's go and chat to Veloce Esports. That was brilliant, because if you looked at your results, you needed that. You had 2 podiums, now you've got a 3rd and a race win. Congratulations.
Yeah, it was just an amazing race. James did an awesome job at the start, getting us into P1, and I just managed it to the end, and yeah, just happy to have a win there. We needed it.
Well, you were pushed and pushed and pushed. You had Wildcats behind you the whole time. It was actually them going into the pits where they drove into the wall. They had a bit of a problem there. And then you got a bit further down the road. When it came to your pit stop, they were way behind you.
Yeah, that's good luck for us then. Yeah, just had good pace all overall. Like, he was pushing hard. So, giving me a run for money. And yeah, just happy to have that win. We needed it. So the next 2 races are not going to be good for us. We have some bad car choices there. So, yeah.
So the next 2 are going to be quite tricky. We've got 6.5 hours of race time to go. How are you all coping as a team? How are you all working together? And how is it for you?
Well, it's going well. I think we managed it really good, like the driving times and stuff. So Dave got to sleep as well, like for quite a bit. So yeah, I'm just gonna do the next race, get some sleep, and do the final.
You're in the next race, are you?
Yeah, gonna split it, 3 drivers of us, all 3 gonna do it, and after that, I'll sleep, and the other guys are doing the sleeping.
I think you've earned a sleep, so well done. There you go. We've just spoken to Veloce Esports. They've got their first win of the Super Final. We have got the next race coming up very, very soon. And the next race, the theme is the noughties, the prototypes from the noughties. 2-hour race on the Modern Le Mans circuit. So this is the second time we've been to the Modern Le Mans circuit of the 7 races that we'll be on. So next race, race 7, coming up very soon. And if you're interested in esports, you want to find out more, go to LeMansEsports.com. You'll find a link there where you can fill out a form and you can find out all the details and how to keep up to date with everything that happens in the lead up to the 2nd season.